right, ladies, gentlemen, everything in between. We are at the penultimate match of the Winter Circuit 2024. We've got Sinners and Calamity duking it out today to determine who will go home with a very respectable third place finish and who will go on to face Elysium in the grand finals. Joining me today is none other than Otofu on the cast. How are you doing?
Yo, what's going on, Cole? How's it going, man?
I'm super hyped for this matchup. This is one of the things we've been waiting for all event long. Also joining us today by popular demand, we've got none other than DBDLeague's very own Ratz on the analyst desk. He will be joining us in the breaks between games, and maybe we'll be dragging him in during the games to give us some feedback. Can you say hi to everyone, Ratz?
Hello, guys. This is me, Ratz. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, coming into this match today, we've got Sinners. They were the third seed coming into this event. We have recently allowed South America back in, a lot of hype around this team, and we had a very surprising knockout of them. They lost to 2-0 to the Night Owls in the first round of the event, and since then they have been on an absolute tear through the losers bracket, eliminating Cynic, Aeonix, Ariando, Night Owls again in a rematch, and most recently NA's Last Hope X9. We also have Calamity coming in from the winners bracket, having only just now dropped down after losing to Elysium 3-1 in the winners bracket finals. So this is what we have going into today's match. Tofu, how are you feeling about these two teams?
This is going to be such a good matchup, man. Sinners is like that super team from South America, right? They are just so good. Like I feel like they just have a little bit of everything, and Calamity so consistent. Like I feel like every time I see that team, they do so well, and it feels like they're kind of at the level where they could just literally take sets from any team, like any team. Like they're always a threat. They're so good, and yeah, this is going to be. I if you want me to predict who wins this, I have no idea. This could honestly, both these teams are so good. I have no idea.
Awesome. So the sets that we're going to have today, we're starting off. We've got Cenobite on Wretched Shop. This is Calamity's pick. And this is a pick that, they've been really comfortable with. They're 2-0 in this set. They've played it against Misery. They've played it against Elysium. And crucially, they picked this against Elysium in their winner's bracket final match. And that was the set that they won out of that. So I'm certain that they're comfortable going into this match on the Cenobite. And it's also the second most popular killer we've had in this event. So we've seen a lot of Cenobite from a wide range of teams. It's a set that's been very studied here. Do you have any opinions on Cenobite so far, Tofu?
Yeah, that's always really interesting. I feel like it's always really interesting to see how survivors handle it. I think Marco is the killer player for Calamity, right? In terms of Cenobite, I've seen him do so well in the past, so it's going to be a lot to handle. I think Cenobite is one of those characters where you can kind of do really well on Survivor against him if you can kind of just keep the game going at your pace. But I think if the Cenobite kind of gets ahead at some point, it can really get difficult to kind of get yourself back in it, especially having to deal with the box and everything as well. It feels like it's one of those sets that can snowball pretty badly if the killer gets ahead. So definitely gonna be a lot of pressure there, right? Especially like you said, with Calamity being so comfortable in the set, even taking a win out of Elysium, who's currently sitting at the top of the winners bracket, right? So I mean, if they can even beat Elysium in the Cenobite set, I feel like no one's got to be safe here. So yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see how that one goes. That should be a really good one.
And if we think of Cenobite as one of those comp staples, a lot of game sense involved, absolutely, we should be expecting the experience of Calamity to come in super clutch here. And I want to see. I am not as familiar with the activity of like South America in this past year and a half, 2 years that they've been away from DBDL to know, how much experience they have playing against like super, uh, um, you know, advanced teams. After Cenobite, we're going to be moving into Mastermind on Wrecker's Yard, which was a pick by Sinners. Calamity, of course, has also played this set before, but Sinners is 3-0 in this set. They picked it all three times, and Jason has walked away with a 4K every single time they've played this set, including also a tie. So they've 4K'd this set four times so far. It's also the most popular killer we've had so far. So we're starting off this match with the two most popular killers, the two most killers we've seen the most so far. And
Yeah, that
I'd also like to point out, sorry, that one of the more hype matches we had this event was Sinners picking Mastermind, having a very unfortunate DC at 5 gens, and still winning that set.
It is incredible. What? That is absolutely absurd. Wow. That is impressive. Huh. Okay, that's interesting then. I'm excited to see that. I've heard a lot about Wee Jason's killer. I've seen it a couple times. I don't think I've actually I'm not actually seen his Wesker yet, so that's going to be really exciting. But I know that he's a very, very good player. I've heard a lot about him. That's a very high anticipated set, I believe, for me. And dude, I think having 4Ks already in this in the whole league already is incredible. That's a crazy record to try to keep up. And that should be a good set. I think that's one of those most exciting. I think that's one of the most exciting sets to watch in general. I think Wesker sets are super thrilling. There's so much room to outplay each other on both sides, right? There's so much micro and macro involved. I feel like you're not really just focused on like one part of the game. There's every aspect that you're constantly going back and forth with. That's going to be a really, really good set. That feels like one of the best like skill sets maybe of the entire game.
And for the Wesker add-on nerds, I'm pretty sure that Wee Jason is an egg and uni medallion enjoyer. So
yeah, which is clearly the best combo, so it makes sense. Clearly. I mean, come on.
So interesting. We have these first two sets we've seen so much of. The teams themselves are super experienced on, and then after that first opening salvo, we're gonna have a little bit more unexplored territory. The next pick that we'll have is Plague on Torment Creek, which is something that we have not seen from Sinners at all this event. We have seen Calamity play it and win it twice, but it was not something they picked. It was picked against them and they won it. So we have a little bit less, prior history to go off of for this. But where my head is at here is we know Calamity wants that pinhead set. We know they've got a lot of veteran players. We know that Laser has this reputation for being like a macro game sense god. I'm feeling like Plague fits very cleanly into that wheelhouse for them.
Yeah, I think the Plague set really fits like a really good, just standard played set, right? I think kind of like you said, I think if Calamity can maybe fall back on the fact that they are extremely experienced, have somebody at the helm like Laser who you know is going to make good calls and you know that is going to lead you into making like the right plays. Plague does feel like the kind of set where as long as you just don't do anything too wacky and weird and crazy, then you should be able to like walk away hopefully with a big result. And also you might be able to catch another team off guard if they're a little bit less experienced with that kind of a thing, right? If you have a team where maybe you're not sure that they're going to be making the exact perfect calls at all times, or maybe they're not perfectly experienced with like a Plague set where like if even like a little slip up happens, you can snowball that pretty badly. So yeah, that actually feels like a pretty good pick for Calamity.
I do think also Plague has been one of these killers that, from what I remember, it feels like a lot of the actual killers in this event have been fairly lethal. We are seeing a lot of 4Ks, and I think Plague was one of the killers that tends to have a little bit more of a mild result. I don't think we've seen too many like, oh, the killer got 9 stages, the killer got a 4K. I think Plague is one where we're seeing a lot more like 7-stage games where 2 or 3 of those stages are just secured at endgame with one person that you just can't save. So I'm really unsure like what the expected result would be for this, and I'm curious to see how these teams are able to play that out. Similarly, the fourth set of the match will be Oni, which is on Dead Dog Saloon. Bit of an interesting map choice for Oni. This was Sinner's pick, and again, we have not seen Sinners play this killer at all. We have only seen Calamity play it once, and they narrowly won that set on the fresh hook condition. Same stages, they had 4 fresh to 3. So again, a set that we don't really know what to expect from either of these teams. It does seem to me to be the case that Sinners as a team have a lot of comfort in some of these more mechanical, micro-oriented killer sets. So I can understand why they would be comfortable with this. Also keeping in mind that South America to EU ping factor, trying to play safe against Oni on that kind of ping is it's an experience. I'll put it that way.
Especially on Dead Dog Saloon too. I think Dead Dog Saloon already by design is probably one of the best maps for Oni to try to get a hit early game, right? Like I think that's obviously the big story in an Oni set is how quickly does he get the hit early. And Dead Dog Saloon, even on good ping, right? Even if it's everyone's from Frankfurt and we're all hanging out on 10 ping, right? Even then, it's still probably his best case scenario is having a map like Dead Dog Saloon. So having a map like that on top of the ping disadvantage that both sides are going to have clearly, right? Like obviously, but yeah, I feel like that's a pretty decent chance that Onis might pop off really hard in that set. Like those might end up being some big killer results there.
So if we get to this point, and I'm sure we're all hoping that we do, our tiebreak for this match is going to be Demogorgon on ARP. And what's interesting about this is Demogorgon is a killer that we have seen a lot of this event, a lot of Demogorgon. Neither of these teams have played this killer at all.
That is interesting. So just super popular killer, but we've not seen either one of these teams play it, huh?
Right. But it is kind of in this wheelhouse, right? Like we're seeing all of the killers that we have today are these kind of like M1 picks or M1 adjacent, and Demogorgon really fits into that. But and one thing that I've noticed is if we think about these teams, right? Laser, very well known as one of the best nurse players in the world. Phenom, the captain of Sinners, as far as I know, is also a nurse main, and we've seen that Sinners as a team has pulled out Phenom, Kafuyo to play these like S tier specialist sets, and we've completely. I'm being corrected. Sorry, Bucky is Sinners captain. My bad. But we've seen these teams really comfortable pulling out these S tier specialist players, and that's just not happening for this match. And I'm curious. I'd love to hear from the teams if they just didn't want to play that, if they wanted to go to this M1 level for a particular reason. But regardless, yeah, Demogorgon will be the tiebreaker that we have, and that's a set that's been fairly well studied. The all the killer players have seemed to prefer like the same kind of build and play style for it, except for we've seen some interesting forced hesitation picks on the Demogorgon that have mostly not paid off, but sometimes really have. And I want to see if we get some of that today.
Yeah, that's always interesting when you see people run Force Hesi because I feel like it sometimes can pop off and maybe carry a game the whole way into a win where you're like, oh my God, Force Hesi value, and you lose your mind, right? But then sometimes it just does nothing at all, and you're like, oh God, what the hell, what the hell were they even doing? It's one of those very hit or miss types of builds where, like, if we see it, we got to keep that in mind, right? Like, they're probably going into it knowing that it might not do much. But I do think that this Demogorgon set as the tiebreaker does feel like to me, it feels like a very appropriate tiebreaker. I think Demogorgon feels like one of the more standard sets, right? Like it's kind of hard to have a much more standard killer than that, right? Just kind of like basic M1 has like a strong just like dash ability that helps in chase somewhat, right? And also can help with zoning a little bit. Like very simple power, but still powerful. And it's just a matter of which team can play around that better, which to me feels like again like almost as close to like quote unquote standard Dead by Daylight as you can get, right? So if it ends up coming down to a tiebreaker, which again, like you said, I think we would all be very happy to see that. If it does come down to that, we will have a set that I think is a very, very good set to just simply determine which team is better on this particular day, right? Like whoever can win that demo set feels like that's a pretty safe bet to say, okay, on this day they're just playing standard DBD better than the other team. So I kind of love that as a tiebreaker.
Yeah. So do you have any like overall expectations for the match result?
Oh man, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I've heard so much about Sinners. I've seen them play a handful of times. That I've seen Calamity play a lot. Like I'm much more familiar with Calamity. They are an insanely good team, obviously, right? But Sinners, they so capable, so capable too. So this is such a tough one to even really judge, right? I don't know. Like I do feel like the teams that picked their sets, it might like this. I know it's a boring answer, but it almost seems like the sets that they chose are going to be very heavily in their favor, right? Like I know that's a very boring way to answer it, but like it feels like the Plague set as well as the Cenobite set feel like they're pretty Calamity sided, right? Obviously anything can happen, but then also same thing about like the Wesker set as well as the Oni set, right? Like those could easily go to Sinners. Like that's kind of what it seems like it should happen, you know? But it's really hard to say. I don't know. I'm curious. Do you think any of these sets are going to end up being upsets at all in terms of the expected winners?
I agree that the Cenobite especially and the Plague set should be Calamity sided. I have a lot of faith in Sinners, especially on the Survivor side, to play these micro sets out really, really well. So I do favor them in the remaining sets. I feel like this should be a 3-2 for Sinners. But before EU fans crucify me, I do think Oni extremely snowbally set, one thing or flippy set. Anything can happen in that one, and I do think there's a world where we see a Calamity 3-1 if they flip the Oni set.
Yeah, that does make sense. As far as I'm aware, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I'm pretty sure that Calamity has an extremely small roster. I think their team is like 5 people, maybe, or something.
Yeah,
And as far as I'm aware, like again, super super good team as we can see, right? They're clearly they're going for at worst third place here, so clearly an incredibly skilled team. But as far as I'm aware, one of the like kind of holes in that team is that they have a small roster, and maybe if there's some like kind of specialist killer picks, they maybe won't have a killer ready to go for it. But I think that's a big reason why these killer picks also benefit them, right? There doesn't really feel like there's any like weird specialist killers, right? They're all pretty standardly played to the point where I feel like even with their kind of small roster, it's not like we're busting out something weird like Xenomorph or like, even like Singularity, which isn't that weird, but at least like a little bit odd, right? Like I feel like everything seems like it's very standard DBD play. So I think that's actually going to be a big benefit to them in terms of this overall best of 5.
Yeah, Calamity is one of only, I think, 2 or 3 teams in this event that only have that 5-man roster. And we've seen from Calamity, like, at least 3 of them have played killer in this event. So it's a team of flex players. And I think that is actually a pretty nice advantage to have as a player to understand, both sides of the matchup, understand where the other player's head is at. Because imagine you're in the match and one of your survivor players is the guy that played the killer for you. So he knows what the other team's killer player is thinking in any given game state. So
Yeah, exactly. So that's got to be a pretty massive advantage for sure.
and on that note, we are loading into the first game of the match, starting off with Calamity playing Cenobite against Sinner's Survivors.
Yeah, Marco here seems to have a pretty decent solid build. Already loses his ruin though, but finds the box also. That's a very fast ruin find from Sinners though. That got broken extremely quick.
Yeah, that's one of those like 2019 ruin meta. I spawn on the ruin, I break the ruin, the killer disconnects. we have seen actually with that sort of change to the gen kick mechanic, a lot of killers have been making this pivot into ruin, especially in the event. We've seen it on like all range of killers, indoor killers, S tiers, M1s. Like ruin is back in fashion, and it appears that Marco agrees with that assessment as Vinny's picked up the box, but right now it's not clear who Marco exactly wants to target. Sort of going for the teleport now after hovering mid-map for a little bit, so there will be a chase onto the Meg here.
Ooh,
Good luck, Meg.
Doesn't get the chain though. That's gonna get her some distance, so that's gonna be a pretty good head start here for the survivors from Sinners. That's gonna give them a good bit of gen progress across the map too. Hey, actually, as a matter of fact, Marco's gonna head back. He's actually not gonna commit to that chase anymore. Meg gets a lot of distance on main, which makes that a little bit less of a viable chase to take.
Yeah, with Wretched Shot main being as strong as it is, and I don't think killers are typically wanting to bring Bam just on the off chance that they get that good window on main or like the good bus. So Marco just opting to just not chase there, but that gives Jason time to make it over to Shaq. He's got Shaq pallet to pre-drop. He should not be giving a tag here, but
Yep. That chain does a really good job of slowing him down though. He'll find a tag immediately afterwards. That was really well played by Marco.
probably some impaling wire value, I think. And the important thing, I think that also now signals that corrupt intervention is worn off entirely. And one thing I wanna keep an eye on is we often see some pretty tight gen spreads on the top side of this map. There's also not often a lot of safety up there, and the survivors just broke one of those gens, which is crucial.
That ball from Jason was so good.
Oh yeah,
Wow, I cannot believe he stayed alive there. That was so good.
this is what we're talking about with like the mic. Oh well,
Oh no! Oh, I think we cursed it.
we don't talk about that.
There's still a good chase regardless. I mean, regardless of that slight slip up there, like vaulting into the killer. I mean, obviously playing on ping like this as well, you do got to go for some prediction stuff, right? Like I think he was just predicting him coming around the corner, trying to pre-vault, right, and like kind of get the advantage. And you do have to make plays like that on ping. So, slip ups like that'll happen. It'll look kind of silly, but at the same time, that is kind of the optimal play is to try to predict. Either way, Jason had a fantastic chase there. I think that was a really good first chase. Bought a ton of time. Two gens got done before that hook even came in. And with Ruin also being gone, they're in a really good position now, Sinners is, to maybe get a good result here.
Yeah, I think Jason, we saw the spec hover over his build real quick. He had live, and that was like the one opportunity he was going to get at that tile to proc that. And with the 2 gens that pop crucially, look, if we see this, there's not really a 3 gen remaining anymore. The closest thing you have is like 2 gens kind of around Shack and the 1 by the hook, but they broke any possible 3 gens topside. They broke any like good 3 gens bottom side. So I don't know if they're gonna try to 1-for-1 for this. They can possibly get the slowdown. It looks like Gustavo is in position to try and go for it. But let's say they go into that 1v3. They're chilling. They don't have a super oppressive 1v3. Ruin's out of the picture. Like, Sinner survivors have done a really good job of playing this out cleanly so far.
Yeah, they're definitely set up to get a pretty good result here as long as nothing goes terribly wrong. It looks like they're not opting to try to go for the 1-for-1, so I believe Ace just may be hovering to grab the save once the killer walks away here. And they're going to take the 2-man gen progress that they've had this whole time as well. Although that does obviously, there is always that balance between, you know, whether you put all 3 survivors on gens or you have somebody hover right in position in case the killer walks away. And they did only have 2 on gens, but still, again, kind of like we said before, with all the gen progress they've had throughout the match, they're still in a really good position gen progress wise. And Live even coming in here to get Jason away from main.
Not just Live, but also the good window. And now we're down to only 1 gen left. They popped the bottom side gen as well. So, like, Jason is donezo here, but they've gotten like everything they need for it. The chain on also starting a little bit slow on the box pickup, but maybe also deciding it's not that big of a deal with the changes to the box that came in kind of recently. It's not too hard to solve this, but we might very well see a chase onto Meg once the hook comes in because of those chains slowing her down.
I love how caster curses always kicks in, man. Like in the middle of you saying it, we see Meg getting harassed by chains, but yeah, she does end up getting the solve. And like you said, now we're in this 3v1 scenario. Really not a bad position at all for Sinners at the moment. Like really not at all. There's 3 survivors up. They're all healthy. There's no one that's even injured at the moment. They have a really good gen split. I mean, look at how far away that corner gen is behind Shaq back there. That is so far. So yeah, very, very good position. They can even like close this out before the next pain res comes in if they really play this well. And yeah, Marco going to be kind of struggling to get anything going. He's definitely got to try to make sure he secures something here for a total result for his team.
We also noticed Vinny's positioning here, taking the box all the way down to Shaq before trying to solve it. You've got a gen there, and the other gens are kind of far away from that. So if the killer commits to you, you can just work the other 2 gens for free. Yeah, we see 2 players, I think, doubling the same gen at topside. And if he doesn't, then you just work the Shack gen. And this is the part of the game where survivors are also going to be looking for, okay, where are our exit gates? Can we have our teammate just die away from them? Because Pinhead just doesn't have any actual mobility himself to interrupt that if you're there. We've seen that time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like they actually are splitting 2 gens. They're on both the one by main as well as one by Shack. So one of them will get hit by pain res, but because they're split, there's really no way to stop both of them at this point, right? Like one of those gens is gonna pop for sure. But in Marco's favor, he does at least get the hook with pain res. If he's lucky, he can maybe manage to find a little bit more before end game, but doesn't look like he's gonna be able to locate the survivor. And yeah, I think also the lack of end game perks, right? Like you mean like the lack of anything like Noed and everything as well means that this end game might end up being a little bit harder still, right? Like there's not even really a guarantee you can make much more happen once it gets towards the late game.
He's crucially got both of his gates are pretty close to each other. They're like with an eye shot, and Meg is right next to them, both of them, and the box is here too. I think. Oh, and Meg is adrenaline. That's so unlucky.
Oh yeah. Also, the chase is being taken far away from as well, so they get to get on the hook. They also get to solve the box. And I'm a little surprised he's actually committing to this. With that, like that box teleport, like you said, is right in between the gates. Like he is gonna.
I think the decision is he has so low stages right now that he wants to play for freshes, especially because maybe he can try to camp Ace depending on where you can hook him, and maybe secure like a 2K7 3 fresh. I don't think he wanted to just camp the Meg out and, you know, because also Meg being hooked between the gates means it's possible they just pressure the gate like at 12 and then 2-man save, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think the best bet is just trying to get Ace on hook. Although they're here for the body blocks, and this could be rough. This could end up being a 4-stage game.
He's out.
And it looks like it will be. I think they're out. Yeah, but the body blocks are here. They're building a human wall, and there you go. 4 stages. ends up being the final result for Marco. Incredible performance from Sinners. We went into this already saying about how we thought this Pinhead set was looking very, very in the favor of Calamity. I mean, don't get me wrong, obviously it's not over yet. Anything can still happen in the second game, but my lord, Sinners really showing up to play. They are really showing up to play. That was a fantastic performance.
1K4 is a rough win con to try and meet for the survivors of Calamity, and hey, at least they get to try that without the Meg debuff.
True, yeah, true. That's a good point. That's a very good point, honestly. The fact that they did this with the Meg debuff is even more impressive, honestly. That goes to show how good they are. They overcame the Meg debuff and still got this crazy good result. That was phenomenal. I mean, again, I've seen Marco absolutely just like dismantle teams before on Pinhead. Like, he is a very good Pinhead player, and they like. Again, I mean, they kind of made it look easy, right? Like, they were just all over it. Their chases were phenomenal. They were winning 50-50s. They just, I mean, they did basically everything correctly. It's hard to really do much about that as killer.
Oh yeah, that was absolutely clean, clinical gameplay from the part of Sinners, and this is part of something that we have seen on this lower bracket run. Is I almost feel like that first round loss to Night Owls was a bit of a wake up call, and ever since that time we've just seen Sinners play. It feels like even in the sets that they've dropped in the losers bracket, they played it extremely well. It's not just the chases being very you know, being executed correctly, but the team has played extremely smart too.
Yeah, it just feels like they're so on top of like every aspect of the game. It's kind of like you said, like after that first chase that Jason had that game where he like kind of had a pretty solid chase, like won a couple 50-50s. Like by the time he died, it was exactly like you said. They had done like the two perfect gens to like split up the gens for late game to the point where it didn't really matter at that point. There wasn't really any pressure for them to like really execute and get like some really good gen done or whatever. They were basically already set up. They just get gen and make sure they get a lot done before Jason dies, and they're good to go. And we saw that actually came through, and they ended up getting that big result. Like, it just feels like they're firing on all cylinders right now. So again, very good start for them, looking really good.
And we wanna drag in Ratz here for a second to see what he has to say about the game that we just saw.
Yeah, about this game, it looked like a really bad performance from Marco here, but like it really wasn't. It's more about like pointing out how well Sinners has played this set, as you've already mentioned here. I would like to just say one thing that my teammate always says, Ushi always says: if you don't give the killers option to choose from and only give them bad options to choose from, then you just win the game. And it's easier said than done, right? But we have seen in this game with this really good early game start, with like the really good chase in the early game, which everybody always likes to point out when the first chase happens, everybody's still healthy, everybody's doing gens, nobody has to rotate as long as you're not interrupting anybody. And the first chase was so good, and they've popped 2 gens for it, that they just gave Elmarco no options to choose from. They had a hook, and his options was to either leave the hook and try and find somebody else healthy and commit for that person that's healthy, or commit a second stage camp, which he did ultimately, because it's also the safer play. But then also, what Sinners did was they have somebody to save. They have 2 people on generators. They're not gonna trade, because if they trade, they have somebody else injured, and they give him the option to choose from to just take the Painter's Hook and go for stages at that point. They didn't, so they ultimately just like said, okay, we can have him just have a chase. We go into 3 versus 1 with everybody healthy, with no 3-gen whatsoever. We are chilling, and we have seen them play it out perfectly until the very end, when Ilmarco tried to get the fresh hook at the end, and then we have had the the balanced landing in the last chase on the hill that was rotated the wrong way around for the killer, and just good buddy box at the end to seal it off. So that was like more a really good work from Sinners to just give Ilmarco no options to choose from, that they just ultimately had a really good performance here. And I also like to point out that though we have a locking mechanism where the killer might not bring a no-ad now because they didn't know their win con, right? They can still play off the win con as in like knowing what they need to get to win. So if you have a Painter's Hook, like in a Painter's, you could just pay for Painter's stacks, get like those 4 fresh hooks or 4 stages with 3 fresh hooks, and call it a day with the slowdown of Painter's alone. So it's going to be really tough for Calamity to see to pull us back, but they can definitely do, I think.
Do you think that in the range of options that Marco had, the fact that his Ruin Totem was broken so early in the trial made it a little bit less appealing to try and play for pressuring survivors off of gens after he got that first hook?
I honestly don't even think that the Ruin alone was really, like, decided really anything, because ultimately, he just got no value out of that perk except like a little bit of slowdown from somebody that was cleansing it, right? So obviously it didn't pay out, right? But it was not like the Ruin is not like the deciding factor of him trying to camp somebody to second or playing in a different way necessarily. Like, it would have helped for sure, like when he has a hook near a generator that's progressed, but that shouldn't have happened in the first place anyways. So it's kind of like you have the option to go for that playstyle, which you then no longer have. Which ultimately the only decision that really happened here was deciding Ruin over Noed to then not have the safety at the end to get the 7 stages at least, and only getting the 4 stages, which with Noed that would have definitely been 7 stages, I feel like, right?
Yeah, definitely. That would have been down onto Adam, or I think it was an Adam.
It was definitely an unfortunate decision to bring the Ruin here and have that being cleansed this early, but it was definitely, I feel like, not like a game-changing thing here.
Fair enough.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it did just feel like the survivors played so well that, like, what are you gonna do, really, right? Like, what can you do? Like, I feel like even the decision to try to go for the 7th stage at the end, like, you can call that greedy, but you could also just say that that's like smart, that you don't want to just settle for like a potential 6 stages, if even, right? Because they were in a position where they could maybe double unhook anyway. So yeah, I mean, just like kind of like you said, limiting options a lot. So it feels like it does make sense. He kind of just made do with what he had, and Sinners just played it so well that there wasn't really much you could do.
And I know we touched on this a little bit earlier in the campfire chat, but one thing I've been looking forward to see from these sets is how hard are the teams going to cook, you know? Are they going to pull out some spicy technology to try and catch the other team off guard? And I wonder if the Ruin might be a little bit in that ballpark over the Noed, but as we are loading into the second game of this set with Jason on Cenobite this time. In previous Sinner games, they have played someone else on this killer, so Jason picking up most of the killers for Sinners will be making his return here.
Yeah, this is an interesting build. Like, my first is not even running a perk like Sloppy Butcher, which we see is usually a very popular choice. Opting for the Agi with double regression. And we'll see how that works out for him. I mean, if you can pop off, this feels like it could end up being a very strong build.
Painter's Pop being very traditional. I think this might actually be the first time we've seen a Cenobite not go for Sloppy, and there's a head-on from inside his power. And now that Chase is switching onto Pedro and a teleport into the box, Jason is just splitting his pressure over everyone. Once again, now Chase will be at main, and we'll have to see. The survivors did get the good window this time, but the main building's oriented a little bit differently, and I don't think Laser's going to be able to make that, so he's running towards mid-map instead, and he has a good loop here, but this should be a tag before he can get to anything.
Yeah, and he wants to head deeper in, so he's going to be heading his way in towards Shack. Probably going to try to utilize this. It's extremely strong pally here to try to buy more time, and again, like kind of like we saw last game. Like last game started off with a really good first chase and a very slow first down. Well, not a very slow first down, but a decently in terms of Survivor, they did a really good job of finding time. And we're gonna definitely make sure we see the same here, right? If Jason can find something early, that's gonna be massive towards this win con.
Yeah, I mean, Shaq is my favorite filler palette. I don't know about you.
Same. I do love me some Shack filler. Yeah, absolutely.
With Hein taking Chase over at these double windows though, and there was a strong filler palette that got dropped right next to him, but he doesn't really have anything else to work with, and we know he doesn't have Lithe because Marco had it, so he doesn't really have anywhere to go. This is, if nothing else, a bloodlust game before he gets tagged, and we'll have to see what they're able to do. I think we see another survivor who's sort of in the area, so it is Laser. So we have 2 survivors kind of running around the mid-map. The crane pallet is getting dropped, and now Chase continues on it. I think Jason can just be content to zone him here, but
Impaling Wire is still getting him too. That was for so long after the wires were still kicking in. Pedro's here to take a hit though. That will get him some distance away, maybe towards main. Looks like Jason wants to try to get around, but isn't going to be able to find a way. The hit's going to come through and get him some more distance. And again, this has been a pretty good start thus far, but Jason has gotten quite a bit of tags.
Yeah, 3 injured survivors at 4 gens now. We do have our first gen being completed, and there's no sloppy in play, but the survivors are giving a lot of tags. I wonder if that's part of their decision to do that. We actually have a 2nd gen pop as well, so even with all the altruism coming in with these body blocks and that head-on play earlier, the survivors are at least getting 2 gens done, and they still have a lot of work cut out for them, as we have to measure, you know, how much resources are they going to have left by the time this first down comes in. And where are the gen spread going to be on this first hit? Because we have Agi in play too.
Hein's pathing right there was so good. He was basically good as dead edge map there, but he managed to kind of get one over on the Wee Jason, and he managed to make it to this filler somehow, even though he really didn't have the distance for it. And that's huge. A 3rd gen pops. Calamity's popping off.
They have no choice.
This is so good.
Here's the thing you got to be worried about if you're Calamity, right? Shack Pallet's down. You cannot die at basement because of the win condition.
Ooh. Hein getting with that vault though. Hein doing so well in this chase.
He has almost nothing to work with, and he's still making it work. It's actually very impressive.
I mean, at this point, would dying at basement matter? I mean, I think it only matters if there's gens nearby, right? Because hypothetically, the person in basement could even just die at this point, I believe, as long as you get the gens done and get out.
Yeah, it would just be really hard to try and defend that if now we're greeting. This is actually turning into an absolute tragedy for Wee Jason here. Like everything is being used for everything it's worth, and he's just not able to get a down.
Bro, Hein is insane. This is such a good chase. How is he still alive? I feel like he should have been dead like 5, 6, 7 times now, but he just refuses to die. He just refuses to go. This has been so good. And now he's even buying more time going on this truck. He is definitely, unless head-on, maybe? No, there's actually going to be another body block. Yeah. So more body blocks coming in. Kind of like you said, the lack of sloppy means that they can reset each other and come in for those body blocks even better. And it looks like the killer's actually bailing from that chase. He said, no more Hein, no more. We're going to look for something else.
And not only that, remember, Hein's doing all of this on like 150 ping.
Yeah, exactly. It's so incredible. Like, this is so crazy to see. Like, the level of play that takes is absurd. Like, that's so impressive. My lord. The down does finally come into Marco. Marco didn't have much resources to work with. Obviously, they've used most of them with that insane first chase. But Painterez and Pop does come in. They're still sitting at 2 gens left.
But keep in mind, look at where the hook is, and that's sort of in the middle of this triangle. There is a bit of a gen spread there around where the hook was. And now Hein has been found. Are we back for round 2?
Back for round 2, I guess. Oh, that chain lands. Round 2 might not last as long.
Oh, unlucky. We saw for like a split second there, Hein's camera was being pointed through the gaps in the Auto Haven wall to like see where the killer was pathing. It's one of those things you can do on this realm in particular. You have those cracks in the wall, and you can also sort of angle your camera down to see over the wall. But it was just a little bit too hard to see around that wall, and that's the second fresh hook. And this is where things start to get a little bit spooky, because a third fresh hook means 4. A third fresh hook means 4 is win, and we're already at 2. And after those initial gens pop, we're getting the slowdown coming in from the Painterez and the pop. And now this is where we see if Calamity can keep up with the pressure. Is now they also have to go for the box. Adam has been found picking it up, but he's far enough away from the hook and these gens as that distant gen pops. So these are our final 3 gens, and Wee Jason is not going to commit to this. He just wants to hold this side of the map. This is his territory. We see Laser running in the distance to pressure another gen, and Wee Jason throwing out possibly those chains just to slow survivors down.
Yeah, this is getting really close, because it looks like maybe will secure Hein to struggle, and then at that point it's going to be next hook stage on anyone other than either Hein or Marco would be the win, right? Like getting that final fresh hook. So
it wouldn't be win. He would need 4 still. So if Hein goes second, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, like if he goes struggle, which he does now, yeah. But yeah, we're getting really close, right? Like one more hook stage on the non-fresh hook would be a tie, and one more fresh hook would be a win. Finds Marco, that is not fresh hook.
And the thing is, with only Laser being the last healthy survivor, that makes it very difficult to try and go against Altruism anymore. And then on top of that, a lot of the resources of the map have been used. Now, chase being taken towards topside, there has not been chase here before. The survivors do have pallets to work with, but these are not super safe. And Hein just honestly playing a little bit more greedy than you would normally see. But he doesn't have a lot of a choice. And it pays off.
He's doing
like, I
so...
want nothing more.
Bro, Hyde is locked in, dude. He's locked in. Oh my, he just keeps making everything work somehow. Like, he just keeps finding himself in positions where he should just be dead, and then he just doesn't die. It's crazy. And on top of that, Jason actually chasing Hyde there was an interesting choice, because I believe it was Pedro that unhooked, right? Who was a fresh hook. And I think if he just maybe went after Pedro instead and just got that fresh hook, that would have been the win condition met, right? Because even if he catches Hyde there, that secures the tie when he kills him. And that's it. But now Calamity's in a position where they can maybe even just win this, right? If he doesn't find a down.
Ideally, he wants to find Pedro, but Laser takes the tag, but Laser has hope, and he's got an Atom to body block for him. This should be them getting out, and even, okay, so once Pedro takes tag, I don't know if he gets enough distance, but he has no one who can body block. Looks like Jason's trying to sort of path around to try and get a chain. He might be able to do it.
But the chain will let Adam get in the way, though, again, so yeah, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way. Calamity they actually take that. Wow, dude. Wow. 3 stages. 3 stages for Jason there. And Calamity still takes that set. Wow. That's got to be heartbreaking for Sinners, right? Oh, my Lord. They played so well on the Survivor side. And then Calamity was just like, hold my beer. And then this was so good. Like, bro, Hein absolutely demolished this set on the Survivor side. Holy. Like, he was, like, just practically unkillable. Like, he was unkillable. That was, like, literally just watching from a killer point of view. It was, like, frustrating to watch. Like, he just, like, nothing was working. And he was constantly finding his way towards something safe and getting out of every bad situation. That was so crazy impressive. Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
And you know that's when the call in Calamity's voice chat right now has got to be super hype. And they're pulling back up to play Survivor right after this, probably against Jason as well. So this is where we have to see how the mental game continues, if this momentum starting from this first set is going to continue, or if the Mastermind set being what Sinners wanted, what they're most confident on, if that's going to be what they need to sort of get back into this and try and swing things around.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the momentum's got to be in their favor, right? They got to be feeling great after that set, right? Like I feel like going into that win con, that was like such a potential huge start for Sinners, right? Like we talked about, like before all the matches started, we even talked about how like the Cenobite set feels like it's a really Calamity-sided set, to the point where we were kind of expecting them to take a win, right? Obviously, upsets are very possible here, but we kind of expected it, right? And that would have been such a huge start for them to just get a big result there, kind of open up out of the gate, taking a win on a set that's maybe more Calamity-sided. Like that would have been such a big momentum swing in favor of Sinners, but then Calamity just turned that completely around, and they have to be feeling so good now, right? They have to be feeling so good going into this Wesker set.
Oh, 100%.
And on top of that, I believe we're keeping the same killer too. So again, that's also like that has to be like a skill that goes into this, right? Is like being able to take a rough game. Like Jason clearly had a pretty rough game on Pinhead there, right? I think being able to take a like somewhat of a rougher game and being able to just shake it off and come back in and make sure you play your full game has got to be like a skill, right? That has to be something you learn and practice over time. The more you find yourselves in these situations. So I'm very curious to see how Jason handles this, right? I mean, again, like you said, he's been very consistent in these sets. I think every single result has been a 4K for him on Wesker so far in this, like throughout all of DBDLeague. So I'm curious if he keeps that up, right? I mean, this is going to be one of those chances where maybe we can see that get broken, because there's a lot of momentum in Calamity's favor. But I would argue that I think for Sinners, you need this. You need something here to kind of like shift it back in your favor and make this a little bit more even.
Yeah, I think if Sinners don't take this set, we will be seeing a 3-0 most likely. But I mean, I feel like, remember, when speaking of upsets, Sinners did pull off, a win with a 1v3 on this, so they know they can do it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's so crazy that they did that, by the way. I need to go back and rewatch that match, because that is absurd. Like, it feels like a set that they're going to be very clearly comfortable with, right? Like, clearly their killer player is going to be very, 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 very skilled here and talented. On top of the survivors, I think probably feeling good about just their ability to outplay the set in general. And we're already off to the races.
Yeah, we've got Jason immediately finding Laser. Laser drops a pallet, and Jason just dips, finds someone else, another pallet being dropped, and trying to play around the tile with the unicorn medallion and the egg. This might actually be a tag.
Ooh.
Egg value, baby.
Yeah, egg is so good. So good. Very, very early hit on to Hein, and here goes the chase. And we'll see if Hein can retain his unkillable status that he had from last game, because, yeah, he was quite the menace last game. Jason seems to be on a little bit more of a comfortable killer. Actually, finds another immediate hit onto Pedro with power as well. Two very fast tags.
Probably not terribly invested in chasing Hein as his first chase. Is it down? No. Pedro does dodge second dash, drops the firecracker, not getting value out of it, but now the chase being brought around this harvester, another strong pallet being dropped, but this is buying all the survivors of Calamity time as Pedro runs up the hill, showing off that he's going to have balanced landing. And does he make that? No.
Who subs his toe?
Yeah, this is getting a little bit tragic.
Yep, and this is going pretty well for the survivors thus far, for sure. They're definitely buying some time. I think Jason, if he can still get it down with like this next set of dashes, which he... Oh no! Another set of 2 dashes down, has to wait for power cooldown. Pedro, I think at this point, Pedro's probably just going to be going to the side of the map, most likely to die. Has a spiller, but yeah, his days are clearly numbered. But still,
are doing a heads-up job of pre-dropping. You know, they're playing safe on the ping, and unfortunately for Pedro, that pallet you can't really play that way. It's just not safe enough, and the swing around the corner is enough. But with 2 gens popping for that first chase, we'll have to see how the gen spread looks. I think those were more or less one side of the map, and laser pressuring Shaxan is interesting to me. I feel like whenever I play this set on any killer, the Shaxan feels so rough to try and do because the killer's just always passing through that way and interrupting you.
yeah, it's so easy to get to that gen from basically anywhere on the map. Yeah, so it's very, very difficult. Yeah, it's a little bit. It is like an interesting. It feels like when you tackle that gen, you have to really just powerhouse it out and make sure it gets done. They're honestly in a pretty good spot though. Like the unhook comes in, and this feels like the kind of start that you. This definitely doesn't feel like a guaranteed 4K by any means for Jason. So again, that streak of 4K with Wesker could end up coming to an end here. Although this should be a pretty fast rebound, I believe.
Yeah, and there's Eruption, but Pedro at least doing a good job of getting away from that side of the map. You saw he was hooked sort of loosely in a 3-gen-ish area where all the resources were down, and he doesn't get as far away as he'd probably like, but it's far enough away that Jason cannot pressure his hook and also pressure these remaining gens. And Jason is kind of wrapping around through the dead side of the map to try and catch someone off guard. He will spot Laser here, but I don't think it's going to be terribly worthwhile to try and chase him there. So he's just going to use his bounds for mobility to get back into the hook, as he will see Lactrin going for the pull. It is going to be a free pull because of the recharge on the bounds, but now we'll see if Pedro's able to get anywhere before the tunnel, as actually Lactrin just takes the M1 tag before the tunnel comes in onto Pedro, who has balance, but you can't really proc that on that tile anymore. So I think now Pedro's just going to try and find a spot to die, but he does have a filler pallet. Does that smash it?
I think that was, yeah. He gets so much distance there. He barely makes that filler too. Jason tried to dash ahead of it, but he does end up making it, and now he's just going to be trying to play Shaq, although back Shaq's very dangerous. And yeah, clean dashes from Jason there to get this kill. And this is going to be the kill with still 3 gens up, which is kind of wild. This a lot feels like it happened very efficiently. It started, like, I think the first hook came in with 3 gens up, and it's going to be ending with basically 2 gens up. So, oh, he slammed Laser into Lactrin. Oh no, 2 health states right there immediately. Also putting Lactrin in deep wounds.
And we do actually have confirmation. It was my bad. The Atom did not have balance landing at all. He was doing it to throw off the Wesker's power. He did have just smash it. Balance landing is on the ace instead. And this can be where we have the momentum swing with, you know, multiple injured survivors, a lot of resources being down. This is a survivor zoned away from like the entire rest of the map. I don't know if Lactrin's gonna be able to make anything from here. Again, we got these really shaky auto haven filler pallets, and Lactrin trying to sort of mind game that he might be playing it, keeps holding W, and he will get grabbed. And with Eruption also now revealing that, yes, in fact, Laser is still on that gen. I think it's Laser. We're gonna have possibly a Painter to interrupt that. And the triple regression build is going to mean cracking these last two gens, but like 4 on the map is going to be super rough. And is Jason suspecting someone might be in the basement?
I think he heard somebody back. Yeah, I think he heard Laser back here. So yeah, he finds Laser, and again, this chase he has this like LT wall, but not much beyond this, I think. Well, actually, no, yeah, there is a filler here. I stand corrected.
But the filler also gives Jason a little bit of like vision on the cross, so we will spot Hein going for that save. Hein's not going to try to 1-for-1, but the thing is now Jason knows what everyone is doing, and the answer to that question is not gens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just sit here. He sees both of them running in the distance. Like they have to sort of commit to Laser's probably gonna get on this car pile gen, and Hein might be still hovering, but they're certainly gonna let Lockstring go to second, and I don't know if they can afford to try and pull, because they do have 2 gens that are both on the other side of the map. Laser's working one, Hein's sort of, I guess, positioned to try and force Jason for the pull, but now with second being secured, Jason just gonna go over to the gen that we saw Laser pressuring before, which is not the one he's on now. So Laser is going to get that gen to about 50%, and with this gen being kicked repeatedly, that might actually have the new regression mechanic come into play.
Yeah, Eruption is like a speed run for that mechanic, man. Like it gets that mechanic going so quickly. That being said, that's even if we end up getting there, because we're actually going to be in some trouble here. Jason already on him, and he is Deathhook. He's heading to the edge of to die. So there he goes. That will buy some time. Laser will likely be able to get the gen done that he was working on. But from there, what do you do, right? I feel like they don't have much progress beyond that. They're going to try to scrounge up a way to maybe finish the final gen, but it's going to be extremely difficult. It's looking like Jason's streak might stay alive of getting 4K1s here on Wesker.
Yeah, with Laser pressuring that gen with Deja this entire time, we know that Hein has not had time to pop another gen. You're not going to be... There's not realistically a world where Calamity can pop another gen. I don't think they have the resource for it, yeah. And so now Laser probably just gets dragged into basement. But or possibly for that pain rest hook over there. Yeah, that is apparently what Jason wants to go for. I don't see a world where Hein's able to get another gen here.
Yeah, no, there's no way.
Do I get good gate RNG? But
yeah, it feels like it's going to be very difficult to get out of this one, but definitely for sure they're only popping 4 gens, so yeah, that it feels like unless something crazy happens to end out of this game, it feels like the win con now for Center Survivors is going to be popping 5 gens to win. But I mean, we'll see. I mean, we'll see what Hein can cook up here in terms of like crouching around and trying to make something happen. Again, kind of like you said, maybe something like gate RNG could happen and maybe get him some kind of value out of this, out of the rest of this. But this was a really impressive showing from Jason. I feel like that early game was actually looking kind of rough. Like Calamity seems like they got out pretty ahead early on here, and again, I even called it. I was like, uh-oh, his 4K streak might be over, but he really made it work, man. Like I feel like once he got that initial down, he just from there just started hitting everything. Just like never really messed up any dashes. Was kind of just very on top of it and was clearly in the zone. So I'm very impressed with how he turned this one around.
Yeah, there was a bit of a point where the resources were down, and then part of it I think was when it was Pedro who was the tunnel out at the beginning. When after Pedro got unhooked, he basically had to path through a fairly dead portion of the map. Like there's like nothing over here by like 12. And so as soon as he got unhooked, he had to run there to die in a better spot. But once he ran there, he had nothing to work with, and it was just impossible for him to get away from that tunnel out. And the first chase was fantastic, but the second and third chase, just he had nothing to work with, not much you can do. And speaking of which, Hein is giving us a scenic tour of that portion of the map. Once again, you're not going to be able to make hatch, and this will be securing that 4K1 for Jason.
Yeah, and this is exactly what they needed, right? Like we went into the set talking about this, about how the momentum was in the favor of Calamity after that pinhead set, and how well they played the Survivor side, and how huge it was for them to like pull that out. And this is exactly what Sinners needed. Like they really did need this. I mean, nice game sense. Also being able to pinpoint the locker that he was in too. That was actually pretty massive. But yeah, I mean, this is still like really huge though. Like this definitely brings it back. I feel like morally it's gotta be a big booster for Sinners to be able to feel good about this, right? Obviously they're not like out of the woods. They still have to try to get 5 gens done here against Wesker, which is not necessarily free by any means, right? Like it's not like Calamity's out of this, but this is definitely a good result that puts them in a position to most likely be able to tie this up and make it a 1-1, as opposed to maybe feeling a little more hopeless.
I think, yeah, tieable. We have not seen too many ties this event. We've only had 2. One of them was a Wesker set that Sinners played, which was tie 4K1, which, I mean, Sinners went on to win. But I think 4K1 is one of those win cons where it's like, okay, that's something we can play to. Even if our last 3 gens are really difficult to break, we can at least play around that and accept that we can get there. I'm also kind of going back. I'm interested in if we're going to continue seeing eruption because of the change in the mechanic. Because it feels like, yes, you're speed running the gen kick like timer cap rather, but one of the things that we're seeing in competitive play is if the survivor is doing their job and dying away from the gens, the fact that eruption is still giving you that 10% from anywhere on the map maybe buys you a little bit of time to get back to it, to pressure the survivor off of it, or to delay it for like your pain res coming in possibly, or something like that. And that seems to be why it's still considered worth it.
Yeah, I would argue it. To me, I feel like it depends a lot on the like killer and like map setup, right? Like I feel like Wesker Wrecker's Yard feels like feels like the type of setup where you're not necessarily like heavily prioritizing like a strong gen setup side of the map. Like if you were playing maybe like like Plague on like Cool Tower or Shuffle Pit or something, right? Like something along those lines, where like you're most likely going to be like heavily holding one side of the map, and you may even prioritize that over things like tunnel outs and stuff. In that kind of a scenario, that feels like where eruption is going to end up just speed running that anti 3 gen mechanic, right? Like you're just going to find yourself getting blocked. This is the kind of set where, like, yeah, I honestly feel like eruption here is very, very good. Like, I would be pretty surprised if either Wesker finds themselves in a situation where a gen gets like 3 gen regression blocked. Obviously, it could happen. Maybe I'll eat my words. But this feels like the type of set where eruption is still very, very good and kind of does, like you said, add to that regression. Kind of helps you feel justified in like committing to chases a little bit further out from the gen setups without really feeling like you're giving much. And yeah, I mean, I think it worked out pretty well for Jason here, and I think it's a pretty viable pick in this set.
And I think one thing that we see a lot with like Wesker, and what makes Wesker sets kind of interesting as one of the like the more mechanical killers with the skill expression of the killer, and also the fact that how much of the chase is interactive for both sides, is that we always see Wesker players like slight variations on what add-ons they want to bring. Are they bringing brutal or not? And I want to see what Calamity's Wesker is going to bring out for this. It's been interesting seeing Wesker players on Wrecker's Yard not really prioritizing brutal strength as much as we would see on like CT where it's standard. We didn't
Yeah.
Jason, and I wonder if there's like a I don't really play Wesker myself, so I wonder from your perspective, do you not feel like you would need it as much for this map?
I feel like okay, a big reason why Brutal is so good on Macmillan, from my understanding, and keep in mind this is my limited understanding, okay, but from what I know, it feels like it's a lot more reasonable to kick a pallet with Brutal on a Macmillan map and then kind of use your dashes to catch them before they make it to the next tile. Wreckers has a tendency, I mean, Auto Haven maps in general have a tendency to like spawn fillers like pretty like plentiful and like kind of close to each other, right? Like we saw multiple situations where we thought someone was going to die, then they find like an edge map palette, and you're like, oh, okay, never mind, they're fine, right? So I feel like you run brutal on a map like this, and sometimes you know you try to zone them, kick pallet, and then maybe catch them off, but they just make it to the next filler anyway, and you're like, okay, well, what was the point? So yeah, I that would be my guess in terms of brutal being less prioritized is just the like the amount of filler pallets that exist on Auto Haven maps, and just kind of like how easy it is, especially with a map like Wrecker's Yard, right? Like Shack in the middle, all those fillers around Shack, and then the maze tiles on like kind of like the next layer out. It feels like it's pretty. I don't want to say easy, but it's a lot easier than I think on Macmillan maps to just try to like transition to the next potential palette or the next potential loop, even through something like Brutal Strength.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. While I'm picking your brain about this, then something that we saw a little bit earlier in the event was the use of the I don't know the exact name of it. It's the green add-on that makes the passive infection rate tick up faster.
Oh yeah,
We saw
video
people
coverage
cooking with
delays.
that.
Yeah. Do you think we're gonna see that again here? That would be interesting.
I don't think so. Oh no,
We do
we're
not.
getting egg and uni again.
It's
As
the
the
best
lag keeps going
combo.
up.
It's the best combo. Okay, it makes sense, you know. And he actually is going for brutal, so this might be a good test, right? All that stuff we were just talking about brutal, we might actually see if I was actually just talking out of my ass or if I was actually making sense. We might see here, because yeah, I do feel like brutal seems a lot less good on an Auto Haven type map rather than a Macmillan one. But Latrin seems like it's probably still worth running, and we'll see if his choice here is correct. Oh, doesn't quite get that. Would have been a really good start if he found that hit on Vinny there. That would have been a disgustingly good start. He would have been able to slam him way off to the side edge map.
And this is also possibly, though, where we might see the zoning coming in if we're trying to force... Oh, pallet stun is super good from Nia. Now, she's not going to get as much distance because of Brutal, but I think... It's hard to see if she actually has a good pallet to reach. I don't think she does. She's kind of zoned on this tires. This will be a tag on her. Lactron might go for an M2 anyway to get her infected, but he will just take the M1 tag. And that gives her the speed that she needs to make Shaq. Can probably pre-drop it, but he's going to pull out his bounds now. And he's not quite able to make it, so the Shaq Ball is pre-dropped. Brutal strength coming in, but Nia now has her pick of the litter of where she wants to take this chase. She's going back to where Chase started, so I guess deciding that she does not want to interrupt her teammates working gens elsewhere, this is the best place for her to die, even though she's zoned a little bit into the corner of the map. This is a good palette to play.
Yeah, but you're definitely right. That the rebound. Okay, really good rebound. And yeah, I kind of like you were saying. I think Nia definitely heavily prioritizing death position here more than trying to go on some like 3-gen juicer chase, right? I mean, that's very often the better play. Like your options there as Survivor is to run towards your teammates doing gens where there might be more resources, but obviously you're gonna interrupt the gens. You might also get like down and hooked in a position that's really, really bad for your team. Like I think Nia going for the smarter play there, kind of heading into the corner. Although tries to play that filler, and Latron does get the better of it, and not a bad start though for Latron at all here.
No, I would say so. Certainly, the fact that he got that first down, much quicker than we saw in the previous game is a good sign. Now, the trade-off here is Nia used fewer resources for that, so we can be expecting to have some longer second and third chases possibly, although Nia, once again in chase, she is still infected. She has a decent pallet here, but she's kind of zoned if it's broken from the other side.
Yeah, I'm a little. Yeah, I think Latchin quickly tried to. I think he tried to outplay it once quickly, but I think he's totally content with just kicking this with Brutal. And yep, clean double dash, getting a follow-up hit on her.
And that portion of the map being such a dead zone, we saw with Pedro earlier. Like, you have so little resources to work with there inherently. Vinny doing a good job to get away from that and getting some talents, but I guess the second dash not quite able to connect there, as now Vinny is going to be fully infected and injured, downed here, and still not really in a gen cluster, so not a bad spot to die, and that also maybe buys Sinner Survivor some time to, they're working on this car pile gen, and they also have a gen in that deep pocket that both would have been a little bit inside of Wesker's bound range from where the old hook was. So yeah, a good death spot here as well. We see all of those remaining gens are far away from this.
Yeah, very, very good death spot. This gen here is going to be losing some progress though. It was at about 50, and it's going to be regressing now. So they are going to lose some progress there. But yeah, the current setup right now with this hook being pretty deep in this pocket, and then the other gens, like the main 3-gen is definitely far away from this, and they're currently cracking that as we speak. So yeah, Center's in a pretty good like gen macro position here. But honestly, the pacing here is very similar to last game. I feel like this feels very similar pacing to what we Jason had on Wesker. So. This still is kind of anyone's game at this point.
Bucky going for the live save. Oh, does not get thrown. That's huge. And both dashes. That's actually massive. Because remember, Sinners know they just have to pop 3 gens. They don't need to survive.
That is 100% true. Vinny here just going to try to buy as much time as he can. Does have balance landing for this hill. Needs to be careful though. Yeah, he's going to get good value out of that. We'll be able to make this pallet gym, and then probably going to head to the corner to die again.
Top corner game. Let's go.
But that was
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say that was huge to be able to get that unhook with only like 1 tag coming in, and even the tag was kind of late. That was pretty massive from them. Like buys a good bit more time without too much punishment involved. And honestly, looking pretty solid now. 2 gens left in the 3v1.
And I do want to highlight here. Bucky gets caught out on the reset. I wanted to point out one of the things that happened for this particular event is the balancing for Survivor is a little bit more lax. So the Survivors are allowed to bring a brown medkit into this they normally wouldn't have. So Bucky, being the Survivor who took that tag for the unhook, was actually able to reset himself, which is something you normally wouldn't. But he is caught out on that. And again, he's dying in a corner far away from everything. And the Survivors kind of have the option to not even play for the save and just crank out those last 2 gens, that is not a pain res. on Bucky.
Pain res. Yep, that's rough, man. That's really, really rough. Pain res would have helped a good bit in at least stalling this out a little bit more, but instead Hook comes in, throws down the pop on that gen. You think popping that gen was a little...
No, I think it's odd. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think you care about that one because those 3 on the other side, those are the ones you should be caring about. So unless Loctrin just thinks, oh, well, they're not, like, yeah, they were definitely working that one. I don't know what the thought process is. I don't think you let that one go.
Yeah, it might have been like I think one of those gens is about to pop anyway, maybe. But yeah, it does seem like maybe it's definitely surprising to see him not take that pop into the gen setup. He does lose one more, and now there's only one left, and he's kind of just hovering in between these gens. I mean, this isn't terrible that he has here, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's okay. Well, it's pretty bad, but it's not like awful. It's not like it's the complete opposite corners, right? Like he can kind of sit in the middle and kind of triangulate it, which I think is what he's doing, while also trying to keep an eye on the hook.
I mean, Jason just having that sprint burst ready to come off cooldown with Vigil. Is now with the second stage being confirmed, now Loctrin is still not quite committing. And the thing is, with Bucky having perfect vision on where Loctrin is, Gustavo can just keep working Shaq sort of unhindered. And I'm pretty sure that this gen will be finished before Bucky dies on Hook.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I'm gonna go to that pole.
Yeah, I think Loctrin kind of aware that he can't just keep doing that until he dies. Yeah, he's going to have to eventually leave in pressure, and he does. That allows the unhook to come in, and this is where these chases are going to matter a lot, right? Like how long this takes. They're to get the reset into Bucky as well. That was a pretty fast reset, so they're already all back to full health and back on their feet. They'll be back on gen soon.
Yeah, I think they're confident. Ooh, okay, and a throw closer to the gen spread too.
Yeah, Gustavo's going to try to get away, but this pallet's thrown, right? So yeah, I think there's nothing here. And pretty fast down. Could potentially be a pain res. And I don't think, unless they immediately hopped on Shaq and are doubling it, which they did. Okay, but that's like the only way it pops. But even then, I think pain res, if he finds a pain res hook, it'll still interrupt it. It's just going to come down to the pain res. Yep, does find it.
Now, I think, okay, so Bucky is staying on that gen. Jason sort of stealthing away to make decisions. Okay, he's not staying on it. I think if they did not reach that 5% threshold to basically deny a follow-up pop, that can be huge here. But if this gen gets popped as well, they're going to lose everything that they were working for.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing now, right? Because again, like I think stopping the aggression is actually kind of difficult. It's much more difficult, right? So getting this pop value, the follow-up pop value is a lot less free than it was like before the patch. Because yeah, pop is not going to come through in that gen, which is actually pretty beneficial for the survivors. They get to keep a little bit more of that progress. They only lose 25% plus whatever aggression is coming in now. And Loctrin right back onto Gustavo. Not going to let him get very far.
I think he has to slug here.
Yeah, looks like he agrees.
Yeah, they will get distance away, but it is so hard to just manage everything right now because you know that gen is so close to being done. And the one sort of silver lining here for Loctrin is where Gustavo died, he can be dragged deeper into this gen spread. But even if you decide to just leave Gustavo slugged, you can sort of check in on him, or you know, okay, if they pick up Gustavo, I've got now 2 people I can target.
Yeah, and you know vaguely where they are, right? Like he's not going to be crawling too far away from like that little like bus setup area that he was at. So, yeah, it's like it's still good information. It's still good pressure. Still having that down. You're having somebody like pretty much completely out of commission until he gets picked up. You generally know where he is. So yeah, definitely an okay spot to work around. But the survivors have been handling this very well. Not really doing good. Like they've been doing a good job of kind of like hiding themselves as well as keeping a lot of distance. Oh no, farming. Poor Gustavo gets farmed though.
Wait, that was actually really funny though. They are
Dude,
back on track.
Dude, like Jason practically had Gustavo in the full Nelson. Like, go ahead, takes Wins Wesker. Like, dude, he couldn't do anything. The poor guy. That's horrible. But yeah,
body blocking right there.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. Yeah. Just very, very high tier body block plays. Absolutely. That's gonna get the pop down on Shaq though. So pop actually is able to come through now. And let's give the second hook on the Gustavo. Now everyone but Jason will be death hook, right? So at this point, it's gonna start looking scary. And Jason's really the only somewhat decent chase to be taking on the survivor end here.
They don't have anything to work with really. Like they have the bus pallet still, and it's a decent pallet, but it almost feels like their main resource is psyching Lactrin out into coming back to the shack to make sure it doesn't actually pop. And okay, this is where we might actually have that gen kick mechanic come in. They can only do this so many times, so Lactrin has to make sure that he's getting maximum value out of his regression perks, because if he just keeps kicking that, then yeah.
Are they pressuring the gen like deep? Not? Is that? I don't know. I don't think they are. Because yeah, there's a gen deep in that pocket, which I was a little worried about myself. But yeah, it looks like it's not happening.
Well, the risky part is if you work that gen and you get caught out, you can't really save that very well.
Yeah.
The other gen that's not Shack is also in like a really big dead zone. So Jason now just they're doubling again. So
yeah, he's slugging.
But without Pain Rest, I think honestly they can commit to this.
Yeah, I think they can too. I think they can die for it, which feels like probably the play, because that's all they got to do is just die for it. Oh, he takes Hydra Survivor. Wait, do they get it? Oh, he kicks it. He kicks it for the 5%. Oh.
That actually is gonna be a tie. Wait. Lactrin's actually so 5-head for that.
Dude, that was so good.
Exactly what he had to. Yeah.
That was so dude. Okay, I cannot stress like how actually like that might have looked like not a big deal to somebody watching that has never been in a situation like that, but being able to identify which survivors injured and then prioritize like getting the swing down on them, and then like also threatening the full health survivor with a grab, and then winning that little mind game with getting the kick. That's so like clutch and heads up to do, man. That is way harder than it might seem. And that kind of a scenario as killer, like there is no way to not like panic at least a little bit, right? You're like running up on the final gen, they're doubling it. If they pop it, they win, right? Like you need to stop it. There's 2 people on it. You need to know how to handle that like immediately just by coming up on it and knowing exactly what to do. And Lactrin handled that so perfect. Like that might not seem like a big deal, but like I can't help but nerd out because that was so good. Like he handled that so perfectly. And yeah, like kind of like you said, that secures the tie here, which is massive. That's so big. And that was so close for Sinners too. It's got to be kind of heartbreaking on their side. They were literally like a second away.
It was a game of inches, but they just didn't quite have enough to get there. So, and also crucially, the hook coming in onto Jason does mean that it is in fact a tie. If Jason had bled out, having not been hooked before, it would have still been a win for Sinners. But I am being told the last time that a survivor actually bled out on records was about 5 years ago. So we're not going to be bringing that trend back.
Yeah, that seems pretty unlikely to be happening. Yeah. That's very impressive though. I mean, tying that up I think is pretty massive. That's going to make us replay the set, yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see. This gives them another chance to maybe keep this Mastermind set alive for him.
It should be a direct rematch as well. We should be having Lactrin coming back and the same survivors most likely. Can I bring in Ratz here for some thoughts on what we've just seen?
Oh, for sure. I wanna point out here the 2 very much different playstyles of both killers. You've seen Jason here with the eruption and the very confident M2s, and we've seen Lactrin here with a very much, I'm gonna call it game control kind of playstyle, which both wouldn't have worked with the other perk build either. Like if you had seen Lactrin with a eruption, probably the check gen would have been blocked fully, and then they would have popped it eventually, right? However, it's also like the reason why Lactrin decided to pop the 30% generator next to Hook when he had the 3 versus 1 and just let that other one go because he was playing for the tie condition with that sort of 3 gen. And if he extends to pop the other one, then they could try and out stealth and they get a free save, and then it's kind of like the survivors have the control over the match of who they show, who they stealth, who's gonna take the next chase, and what gens they want to perk on. And then also Lactrin is required to kind of outplay every single pallet with his M2, which Jason was really confident in doing. We've seen Jason with his eruption playstyle saying, I'm gonna just force down those safe pallets, which we have seen in the first chase, like 2 gens pop for Shack, Crane, and the Jungle Gym pallet that the first hook was on. And I also want to point out, Jason like kind of turned around from the hook and hooked somewhere else, probably skipping a pain rest because he noticed that they popped 2 generators for the first save and didn't want to like waste the pain rest for 5% gen. And then getting the pain rest later on with the pop eruption, just forcing the quick chases into the good slowdown with pain rest pop and then eruption as well in a fast-paced game where you're not going to hit the 8 stacks. So we've seen very different playstyles from both killers. it worked out for both. It was very close on one of those sets, but either way, considering that this set is like heavily in the advantage of Sinners, I think Calamity pulled up a really good fight here, tying this up, and I'm excited to see how they're gonna play this out in the second try of this.
Do you think that we're gonna have any stylistic change, or they're gonna double down on what we've been seeing so far?
I think they're just gonna double down on what we've seen so far. We've seen the confidence on both. Maybe like Mastermind is a very difficult killer to play effectively, right? We've seen Jason being very comfortable on the M2 and outplaying every single filler palette except those safe ones that he just ended up breaking. The jungle gym, he tried even to outplay it, but Check and Crane just broke it and went next. Therefore, also not opting to go for the brutal strength, because why run brutal strength if you're just gonna outplay those pallets anyways? And if you're only gonna kick 2 pallets in the entire game. And we have seen Lectrin kind of saying, I'm gonna play this regen, I'm gonna hold control over the match and play off the pressure that I have in the positions that I have. So we've seen the brutal clearing the map in that area that he wants to play. We've seen the pop and painers, not the eruption, because that way you're gonna hit those 8 regression stacks on your 3-gen much quicker, and the painers pop allows you to be a bit more selective for the chases that you want to take. So we've seen 2 different playstyles, but also they're really comfortable on what they do. So Lectrin is comfortable in the playstyle that he's enforcing, and so is Jason, and I'm pretty sure we're just going to see the same thing again.
Awesome. All right, so before we load into the rematch of this set, we're going to take a brief break for the sake of both teams. So be sure to stay tuned when we come back with the Mastermind rematch. We are back replaying this Mastermind set between Calamity and Sinners after a very, very close 4K1 tie in the group.
Okay. What was that? Oh my God. Lectrin. Okay, Lectrin coming out explosively from the break. Yo, I think they took a 5-minute break. I don't know what they were doing in that 5-minute break, but Lectrin came back ready to go. That was amazing.
There we go. Like, and keep in mind, we were seeing so many moments in the previous game where it felt like Lectrin's double, like second bound, was just slightly off and it bought Survivor's time. This time, he does not miss 2 perfect double bound combos, and he gets a basement hook at 5 gens almost straight away with Shack Pallet down, I believe.
Wow, dude, this is an incredible start from Lectrin. This is so good. Holy, and Sinner's now on the severe back foot. This is interesting now. Like, they're on the back foot. This is this again, we talked about this before. Obviously, we're replaying the set from the tie, but the same rules still apply here. Like, they kind of need this Mastermind set, I think, in this best of 5, right? Like, I think if they lose this to Calamity, this is going to be very devastating to try to come back from. So them being on the back foot this early too now is that's a tough spot to be in. I'm curious to see how they handle this, but they need to handle it well if they want to stay alive here.
And that's one of those situations that's kind of rough to prepare for. Like, when you're scrimming this set, or you're like, okay, so what happens if we have someone die at 20 seconds? Like, what's our game plan then? And it appears to be that their game plan is split 3 gens, trying as much as they can for it. They are on gens that are kind of far away. As Lectrin knows, he can afford to just camp this hook, get second stage for free. The survivors just can't go for that. You will.
Yeah, like, what do you do here? It, like, the hook is like right in the center of the map, in basement. Like, the only gens you can safely progress are the ones that are really far out, like this deep pocket gen, right? Like, it's hard to even have any gens that are safe to progress because of where the hook is. And Lectrin can kind of just patrol around. He might even do this the whole way till death, right? Like, why not? Like, this was so early.
Now, the one sort of silver lining for the survivors is it looks like the version of Wreckers that they got has the gens kind of more towards the edge of the map than you might normally see. And so they won't be as punished for working these. Under some Wreckers RNG, you might get, okay, you do your faraway gens, and then the last 3 you have are so close that your end game is just miserable in the 1v3. So we are likely going to see this come down to 2 gens very quickly. And now the test is going to be how well can Sinners play out the 1v3. Keep in mind, again, that chase happening so quickly does mean that they are going to have all of their resources to work with basically in the 1v3.
True. Yeah, that is very true.
And we've seen Sinners again. I can't stress enough. We have seen Sinners win this with a just straight up DC at 5 gens. So
yeah.
They know they can at least try.
Yeah, this is like that, but with only 2 gens. Like, yeah, I mean, they're definitely a spot that they have been in before, but worse. So I'm sure they're somewhat comfortable. Although Jason kind of zoned here, with Brutal also on edge map.
And he doesn't have the kind of filler power there to play, so he's gonna die. Now, so now we have to know, is Lactron gonna get a pain resonance off of this, and also, is he gonna be able to carry Jason, deeper into these gens? We hear a lot of progress from Vinny's gen as well, and that got pain res. Yeah.
Yep. So pain res gets hit. Pop, if he can find Pop over to that other gen as well, that would be an insane amount of regression.
But like, even though we had such a miserable start, and Pop gonna hit Bucky's gen as well, we have 2 gens that are actually reasonably well progressed, and the hook is at least far away from them. So Sinner's not that far away from getting back to that 4K1. Obviously, it's not as close because of how it was so close to being a 4K0 last game, but close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So
yeah, they handle this so well. I think this is something we see a lot when we get like a hook, especially like an early hook. You sometimes get to situations where the survivors have to try to balance out, like, okay, do we have like 3 on gens, or do we have 2 on gens with somebody hovering to possibly unhook? These guys were just like, hey, Gustavo, sorry about your luck, buddy, but you're done, so we're just gonna let you die in basement. Ooh, that was a good juke from Vinny. But they totally just let him die in basement and just bash gens with all 3 survivors, and they've kind of just like have not let go of that. And yeah, even with that very early down, like you said, not a horrible position. So a lot of resources up, 3 gens done, and even still a good bit of progress on the gens that are left right now as well. It's still really anyone's game.
Yes, and it looks like Bucky's probably on a gen because Jason has not been healed and is also not spraying. Now, this is going to be a pain res coming in onto Vinny as well, almost certainly, because the hook is being... No, it's not. Ooh. Okay, so we will get to 4K1. And Fang with the medkit is actually resetting herself. Certainly going to be waiting to get the heal off before spraying. After all, spray will reveal you. Bucky will take a tag for that, but now...
Ooh,
and now,
Lactron knows
everyone. Yep.
Yep, knowing positions here is huge. He's just gonna dip back and watch rotations, I believe, right? He generally knows. I think he just saw Bucky in the distance rotating towards that gen.
You can hold cross here. And this is a little bit of a further gen spread than we had before. Also, like, because if you're working this hill gen, you have the option to sort of, with or without balance, you do have the option to kind of rotate around top. Whereas before, one of the remaining gens being in the pocket meant that if you get chased there, you don't have anywhere to go because the killers are always coming at you from your escape route. Ooh. And that's kind of where Bucky's being pushed now, but he's just dying in the furthest corner that he can, as expected. He's got a rock, if no one's got me, the rock's got me, or he's going for the tree instead. But
the unhook just now coming in, that will make it so the heal will be really, really fast. But yeah, it did manage to at least make it to a pretty far dying location. This final gen is going to be very tough though. Like, do you think there's a what do you think are the chances here that they actually break this gen setup? Like, I feel like
it's strange because we saw how brutal that start was, but if we think back to the game state that we had before, when we got down to that 4K1, honestly, the survivors, I think, are almost in a better position now than they were then.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, they probably have more resources on the map, right? So like,
at least more resources, but the gen spread being further. The only thing is they don't have any current progress, and they did have a little bit of that before. So,
Jason not gonna get away with that one, and yeah, Lactron feels like he's just keeping up the pressure right now. They can't seem to really get the better of him in chase for at least not for very long. And I think as long as he's continuously getting these hooks and downs, like I think they still don't have gen progress. Kind of like you were saying, like it's been quite a bit, and it's so hard, right? In these 3v1s, it can be very, very difficult if the killer is consistently finding you and getting the hits and downs quickly. So it can be very, very difficult to find any time to progress the gens at all. And Lactron's been doing a really good job of keeping up that pressure. And here finds another survivor, and it might just keep up. Well,
look at this hook. That is like the best possible hook for Lactron, and another sky hit. Same sky hit.
Oh my lord! Now he's just showing off.
I think the real difference in this game was not even that basement hook at 5 gens. It's simply the fact that Lactrin has been executing far more cleanly and mechanically. We're not having these narrowly missed double bounds.
Yeah, like it's like I think mechanically, Lactrin has just been so on top of this. Unfortunately, he gets that double dash into Bucky, but it only is a throw that does no damage. It was a little bit janky, but no damage done. But he follows up with an M1. He's got multiple people injured now. Vinny, the only full health survivor, he's gonna head back to the gen setup. Does find some scratch marks. Yeah, this is the full health survivor. So here's Vinny, the only healthy survivor, and gets hit through the pallet too.
Is she playing for smash hit possibly? I don't think she had it. I think she was
Parental
down.
guidance?
I'm not sure.
Was that parental guidance? I don't know where she went. I think she vanished. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Smash it, parental guidance.
Smash it, parental guidance. Yep. Just gets the pallets done and vanishes into the night. You love to see it. Actually, really good value there.
Oh yeah, with DS, it's such a fun combo. You die on a pallet, DS the killer, smash hit them, and you're gone. You're just gone.
Yeah, that's so nasty.
It's one of like the few times when you can like get away with running like smash it and like a nurse set. It looks so troll, but if you actually pull it off, it does work.
Yeah, especially against nurse, right? Like I feel like getting that distance against the nurse is massive, right? Like that's almost like game ending. It feels like.
We've seen it before, but unfortunately the survivor wasn't able to break LOS, so DS and the smash it was still like double blink range. So I think this is going to be the part of the game where I don't think Sinners can come back from this. I think this will be a 4K1 again.
Yeah, that was another pain res coming in right there too. So if they even had any gen progress at all throughout this, it just got hit. So yeah, and as we can see right now, neither one of them are even on gens at the moment. So yeah, this feels like it's probably going to be another 4K1. So I'm excited for this to be another tie set and for us to be stuck in this Mastermind set forever. Unironically though, I would actually be about it. Like these sets are fun as hell to watch. I would actually be okay with being stuck here forever. But we'll see. I mean, this feels like Lactrin's going to get a 4K1, and again puts pressure on Sinners. They have to keep up the results and make sure they keep playing well. And I mean, we'll see. Jason's been pretty consistent with his Wesker thus far, but it's really going to be putting it to the test now.
And there's worse sets you could die. From a viewer perspective, certainly.
True. Yeah, we get out here, like fucking tying on Skull Merchant sets or something. You know? I'm more than happy to watch a ton of Wesker, bro. I'm all for it.
I vividly remember in the beginning of All Hallows League, at the end of like the first day, we're 4 matches in and we had a replay of a Wraith RPD set, and those were like already 15-minute games. So I'm glad we're not having a repeat of that.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, I think if it's a fun set, I'm down for as many replays as possible. You ain't gonna hear any complaints from me. They actually get the unhook there relatively for free.
It's also, I almost wonder when you have like mechanical sets like this, is there a component where, like, okay, we had the pinhead set first, right? And it was Marco playing killer, not Lactrin. And I wonder, especially when you have a small roster and you're also playing Survivor, like when Lactrin pulled up to play that first Wesker set, he had not really had an opportunity to warm up before that. So in a weird way, that the tie that we just had is kind of the warm-up for the Wesker players going into the second set. So I want to see if we also have a bit of a level up from Jason on his own mechanics.
True. I think the like flip side of that, if I wanted to like maybe play devil's advocate to what you said, is I almost feel like there may be a bit of fatigue as well, right? Like this is also a best of 5, and the fact that we're replaying this, and like you said, it's like the same players. We've seen Jason play Survivor every round as well for Sinners, and same thing with Lactrin. So these players are playing on both Survivor and Killer, and again replaying these like very like mechanical sets and everything. It could also do that as well, where you could kind of start to catch fatigue, right? I mean, this could potentially go the whole way to set 5, which would be, I don't know, 10, 12 games if you include this total. Like that could eventually take its toll, right? And I feel like eventually you get to a point where you start to like slip off mechanically and stuff just from fatigue. I mean, obviously we're not at that stage yet. Lactrin just feels like he was getting warmed up because he looked nasty this game. Jason will not be able to finish this by the time Hash gets kicked. So yeah, I mean another 4K1 here, and pressure stays on.
1v1 Shaq.
Yeah, of course. That's what end this. Come wreckers on 150 ping with no pallets on the map. Let's do it. Let's do it, man. All pallets thrown. Let's do it.
It's just a ladder match now.
Yeah. This is actually for all the elo right here. Yeah.
I do really like the point about the fatigue when we think of, we don't know how practiced the teams are on some of those ladder sets. They're like with Cenobite, with Mastermind, we know these are comfort sets. They're the first pick from these teams, right? So I would be curious to see how that potential fatigue plays in when we start getting into some of the less comfortable sets that we have going forward, because our next matchup is going to be Plague after this, and that's maybe a little bit of an unusual one, also with the mapping what it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit like more unorthodox in terms of like gameplay and also just like how you have to handle macro and everything. So yeah, that will be interesting to see how they do going into that. I'm still curious to see how Jason does. I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because we still have this next Wesker game to go. Jason, again, he's been pretty much like Mr. Consistency when it comes to Wesker. Pretty much always 4K1. I mean, yeah, it's been a 4K1. Has it been a 4K1 exactly every time?
No,
Okay,
no,
he
it
just
has not
always
been.
4Ks. Okay.
It's he has never not 4K'd. I think we've seen at least 4K2s. I have to consult my spreadsheet briefly, but I know, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if he is able to top this going forward. I don't think we've seen anything better than a 4K2. No, we have seen a 4K3 from Jason. That's the
Oof.
best that we've seen. He 4K3'd Aeonix. And he's
Damn.
never gotten down to 4K0 before. Yeah. Survivors have not popped all gens against Jason Wesker at all.
That's so impressive. And he's played what? Like I think you said 4 games going into this. So now it's been 5 with that last game. Yeah.
He
So yeah,
played
5 games. Yep. And again, like I've seen the Onyx play. Obviously, we've seen Calamity plenty too. These are very good teams too. So that's an incredibly impressive record for Jason. That is actually very, very impressive. And I'm curious to see if he can keep it alive here. I'm sure Calamity would love to break that record and just, put the set behind them and go up 2-0. That would be massive for them. But Jason gonna be kind of in the driver's seat here to see what he can do in terms of making something happen here. If he can get a big result, can keep Sinners in this, maybe could just tie it up again even and kind of keep the set alive that way, but needs to make something happen.
I think at least the one sort of consolation is 4K1 is like always, you can at least, if the match goes south, comfortably play for tie again. You don't have to like sweat. You don't have to sweat super hard to try. Okay, I have to do something crazy here because I have to kill them at 2 gens, 3 gens, and then you look like an idiot because it doesn't work out. It was a 15% success rate play, but you had no choice. We've seen that before. Like, and it feels so bad when like you hand your killer like a 5-stage win con, and then you watch them have to like try to slug people when it makes no sense because it's the only way they're ever going to win. But this is something that is not nearly going to be as rough to play, and I'm sure that Sinners are comfortable at least trying to play for popping all gens.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of like we've been saying with how consistent Jason has been in the past, right? Like, assuming he can just get like a 4K1, I think they would be totally okay with that, right? Like, I feel like if you're Sinner, I imagine if I was on Team Sinners, I'd be like, yeah, man, we can keep this up all day. Like, we can sit here in 4K1 all day, so like, we'll just keep going until you don't 4K1, right? So like, I feel like that's one of those situations where I feel like they would be totally comfortable doing that, and yeah, that could end up being what we see, right? This could be a double tie. I really honestly wouldn't be that surprised by it. And if you're Sinners, that feels like even an okay result, right? Like I feel like as long as you don't lose it is really the main thing, right? Because it's kind of like we've been saying over and over and over again with Calamity taking that pinhead set to start, especially that pinhead set that was like so close to going Sinners' way. They got to that 1-0 lead, and with the rest of the best of 5 killers being the way they are, especially with, again, like you said, with Plague being next, who we also feel like is a pretty, like, it's at least like a minor advantage towards Calamity overall in the set, right? I feel like with Sinners, I feel like you really don't want to go into that Plague set with that being like the match point, right? Like you don't want to go into that set being like, okay, if we lose this Plague set, it's just completely over. Like this is a really important win for them to take, I think.
The thing that Calamity is really showing up on is we at this very first Cenobite game, right? You've got 4 stages to play around, and you only give up 3. You show up, you tie this, and then Blacktron seemingly like fixes everything that was going wrong, gets an incredible early game, closes it out once again. Like Calamity is showing a good amount of like just resilience. Like no matter what happens, they come back and they play better. Not even at par. They're playing better than what we had just seen. So I'm honestly getting a lot of confidence in this team to show up big time here as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a very capable Survivor team. Absolutely, yeah. So like, yeah. I mean, it's not impossible. Like again, we keep saying about how Jason is so consistent, but it's not like it's impossible to beat him, right? It's not like he is a guaranteed 4K every time. Like, I mean, Calamity can definitely pull something out here. I think a big thing that does make this difficult though is obviously the fact that there is like the like ping and play, and Wesker being such a mechanical killer, right? Like he's one of those killers where like mechanically you can outplay almost any palette, right? Like obviously some are riskier than others, but ping also makes it like like slightly more than killer's favorite too. And I feel like regardless of how like smart that Calamity plays, they also need to just get some like little micro wins too, right? In chase, which can be so difficult. Like against a skilled Wesker on ping, so difficult. And I mean we've been seeing that in every single match here, right? On both sides, right? Like both sides have the same ping advantage going on, right? So we've been seeing that from the survivors of both sides. It can be so hard to win those. And we might need to see something like that from Calamity here if they want a chance to actually get this.
One of the things that's been interesting about watching when I've been watching like Sinner Survivors doing chase is that they will play disturbingly greedy sometimes. If you notice that, there you will
Yeah.
have a Bucky and Gustavo in particular will just absolutely greed these edge map filler palettes, and the killer will swing through it and not get anything. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of times I'll watch teams where they either greed way too much or they just pre-drop everything. And I feel like if you're going to do one of those, pre-dropping is much better unless you just have no choice but to greed. And the Sinner survivors seem to do a really good job of mixing it up and making it hard for the killer to anticipate.
Yeah, yeah, like that definitely seems to be a very effective thing to do. We also see a little bit from Calamity too. I think more so on the pinhead set rather than this one, but yeah, like definitely that like mixing it up between greeting and playing safe and keeping the killer on his toes is very good. And we see Jason with the exact same build, so not really changing anything up. Still going with the old triple regression. Worked pretty well last time.
Oh, I got caught a little off guard there.
Yeah.
We're running into the Wesker, not expecting him to be there, but now he at least will be able to make Shack, although Jason's got both dashes after this break.
Yeah, and I don't. He should there will be a maze out there of some sort. He also has this filler too, so he's got a little bit to work with here at least. He needs to be careful that that is reboundable, but even here it's kind of risky.
Almost egg value. Not quite.
I
But
think
also,
he was just anticipating the flare out and he didn't get it. So
look at this gen setup. This is kind of gross. These two corrupt gens with like Shack next to it.
oh yeah, okay, interesting setup. And he's gonna get it down here as well. This is relatively decently fast down as well. Like still at 5 gens. There's not gonna be a whole lot of gen progress to speak of, right?
1/3 on, 2/3 on that, probably, and I don't think that was pain res unless it hit lasers gen.
It did not. No.
I'm not sure, but the crucial it hit someone gen. But the crucial difference here is that was a pain res hook as opposed to a basement hook. So the regression and also now the pop. The regression is coming in a way that it didn't in the previous game, where yes, the survivor just sort of died without any attempt to save them, but their death bought 3 gens worth of progress. And Jason is not going for that, instead opting to actually get some pressure. Laser's gen got nuked, Laser got tagged, and now Jason can kind of, again, hold the choke. Wreckers having Shack in the middle, you can just sort of stand there and you see if people are rotating. I don't really think of Wreckers this way, but we're seeing the killers almost playing these hooks like you would on Suffo.
Yeah, like kind of just like holding cross in the middle and kind of just keeping an eye on rotations. Yeah, I mean like the tag on Laser makes this a little bit better too, and Jason seems pretty content with just forcing struggle. And he is going to do that. So there we go. Hein being put in struggle already. 2 gens are going to pop. Lasers is pretty close to popping too. So we're coming up on 3 gens popping for this, which again kind of matches pace to like the last one as well.
But with a loose 4 gen, which is much different. So Jason's not going to commit to that. I wonder if he's now looking for whoever he suspects is going to try and go for the pull. Actually, no. It's unclear. And this car pile kind of getting in the way of double dashing back to hook. The survivors might just be trying to crank out more gens, but no, this is going to be a 1-for-1 from Lactrin, which again, another pain res hook here. And the question is, do you go for the pain res now or do you try and tunnel? No, it's going to be the pain res. Yeah. That makes sense.
He might even go for the pain res and then still stay on 9, right? Like, it's record yard, so even getting distance isn't that crazy because, you know, eventually you're going to hit the corner where you can take an angle on him.
And he's going to be infected.
Yeah, exactly, with the infection as well. Yeah, so honestly, not a crazy idea to just stay on Lactrin anyway, or sorry, to stay on Hein anyway. And yeah, he looks like he will.
And so the read now is they're gonna probably pop. Liz's probably gonna pop the hill gen for that, not getting healed this entire time. Hein kind of being chased into a different area of the map. This is where he wants to be. Does sort of win that mind game, but now he's fully infected, and I'm pretty sure this is not a terribly safe tile against a Wesker, even without the infection.
Yeah, that's a rough tile regardless, but greeting it, playing very well. I don't think he makes this. No, he does. He actually does make the window, but I don't think he's gonna survive much longer.
Egg.
Yep, egg value. Obviously, the bought a decent bit of time considering, right? Considering the tiles that he stopped at, and also the fact that he was infected, not bad from Hein at all. Honestly, like pretty solid play there. Definitely bought it a little bit of time. Allows the unhook to come in with the reset. They don't quite get the reset on Laser, but they get 3 gens done. They get at least one of the resets. Laser's a medkit, so he can reset himself now. And
Go ahead.
very similar, yeah, very similar spot. Like you said, I think maybe the gen setup is a little bit better here for we Jason, but very similar spot as we found ourselves last game.
Yeah, I mean, if this set somehow ends up tied, I'm gonna have to check my calendar because it might just be Groundhog Day.
Yeah, we might be here forever, man.
Well, okay, we do get that, and I think Laser can be dragged deeper into this setup. I don't think. Wait, do we have a distance gen? Not really. So this is possible for Jason to try and hold these last 4, but I don't know because yes, there's a survivor dead. I don't think there's a lot of gen progress, and when we reached this game state in the last trial, we were down to 1 gen left, I think. So this is playable. Now, and I think this might also be a scenario where the eruption being in play matters a bit more. The question of, are the hook states matching with how many gen kicks you have? Because that gen had a lot of progress on it, does lose a lot of it, but now Pedro kind of has to be the one going for this. Actually, it's Lactrin gonna 1-for-1. I don't know if that will end up being worth it.
Yeah, that's an interesting play. Laser gonna body block, and yeah, they do have a filler here, but not the best filler. Okay, he takes a hit during the stun, blind attempt, but do they both get away from this? Looks like he's actually, yeah, he's sticking to Lactrin here.
Laser could have DS, I guess. That could be the thought process.
Yeah.
Oh, clip that.
Yeah,
And it was Lactrin too.
That was going to the montage, baby.
Yeah, no, we're waiting to put that clip and the Sky Wesker from the beginning into the next X-Size video. How Lactrin really plays DBD.
Oh no. Laser does get found and redowned though, but honestly, decent bit of time bought there. Pedro surely has been cranking a gen this whole time, so we Jason feeling the pressure, wants the slug. Clearly he, I think, wants to go for this win con if possible, right? Like he does not want to even give up one of these gens if possible, wants to just 4K2. That was an incredibly fast pickup though. What even just happened right there? That was so quick.
By eruption. I don't know. They have some healing perks. Like, okay, so maybe there's a world where Lactrin had Will make it and still opted out from picking Laser. That's probably it.
I feel like probably, yeah, that was an incredibly fast pickup on that slug, yeah. And that, yeah, that's exactly what it was. He's also full healing him now, too. So Laser back to full reset. And yeah, I mean, Jason got, like, I mean, I don't know if I would say greedy, but he was trying to play around the win con there, right? Like, really didn't even want to give up even 1 gen, so didn't want to, like, take the chance to hook Laser there. And gets a little punished for it, because they get that pickup very, very quickly. Laser's back to his feet, full health. Lactrin injured. They're in a much better spot than they were just, like, 30 seconds ago.
This gen is so close, and you only have so many, like, I really don't know how I feel about Eruption, because that gen, we hear the sound effect, that gen is so close to being regressible anymore, and if you're not getting it with, like, pop or pain res, I don't know if that ends up being worth it, because this survivor is surely going to be dead soon, but there's going to be someone popping that gen. We're going to be down to a tie. I don't know if Calamity Survivors can actually play for a win here, but...
Ooh, Latrin sprint bursting. I mean, there's okay, yeah. I mean, there's gen number 4, getting it before the eruption pop too. So no eruption value coming in, and yeah, now it's just gonna be a matter of can they try to actually get the win as opposed to the tie here.
I mean, if you're going into 1 gen left with only 2 survivors, it's basically and no gen progress. It's basically not winnable unless the killer has a stroke mid game. It just you can't.
Yeah,
Like, because he can just at that point any killer becomes hit and run. I mean, yeah, like depending on how your gate RNG is, you can maybe play for that. It wouldn't matter in that scenario.
That's
you can
it.
try and play for a fresh bleed out on Pedro, but most likely someone's in the call with Jason telling him like, hey, if you have to pick someone, pick Adam.
Yeah, that was a huge find there on the laser too. Like laser was trying to hover for that unhook while Pedro cranked the gen at Shaq. And Laser gets found and tagged, and then also Pedro gets pressured a little bit. He doesn't. Laser still manages to sneak in and get the unhook, even injured. So, still not the worst spot. Latrin, unfortunately, not able to get that fast vault in time with the endurance, so he's gonna go right back down. And like you said, yeah, this feels like it might end up being the kill with. Actually, is Latrin Deathhook? I think he is, right? Yeah. I believe he is. So yeah. So that'll be Latrin Den, 2 survivors up, and yeah, I don't think there's enough gen progress here to really consider the idea of a gen popping. So. It's kind of look like we're having another tie, another tie. I think we might be going into our 3rd Wesker set of the best of 5, maybe.
I think this would be the only time I've ever seen a double tie in DBDLeague. I'm pretty sure. I've seen. I feel like 4K1 is like the most likely culprit for ties. It's often something we see, especially on like old DDS sets. You'd see like Cenobite and Wraith on DDS being so consistently 4K1 that it was not that uncommon to replay those. But it's one of the interesting things every time the new seasonal balance comes out, where you see how the new map especially changes the expected results. I'm being told from Ratz that there was a triple tie on Season 8 Elysium versus Eternal on Oni CT, which is incredible to me because I feel like that is a really swingy match that should not be consistent at all. But
yeah, that's interesting that's the set they got a triple tie. Like this feels much more likely than a set like that. Say, hey, maybe we'll break that record. Maybe we can, maybe we can get the 4 ties, quadruple tie. Just the deafening silence after I say that is.
Yeah,
everyone's like, wait a minute, we're never gonna leave we're gonna be here forever, huh?
When competitive matches the pub experience of Wesker fatigue.
yeah, actually, comp players now hate Wesker because they're so sick of seeing him after 5, 6, 7 tiebreakers in a row.
I mean, look, I've heard this expression many times, and it is true. There are 2 kinds of players in Dead by Daylight: people who hate Wesker and good players.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good saying, and I feel like I might steal that, to be honest with you. This is an interesting spot because, like, hypothetically, like maybe if Pedro doesn't get found, they could do like the trauma tech thing here, right?
Yeah.
With laser, maybe like that's a possibility. But also that means you got to go what, like 3 minutes, like maybe a little less, maybe like 2.5 minutes without getting found, which is also kind of difficult. We saw him dropping his item over and over again and picking it back up just to try to stop crows from spawning. So that does help his case a little bit towards not getting found.
I mean, yeah, as we know, it can be absolutely infuriating to find that last survivor if they're good at stealthing, and Pedro so far doing a really good job. Like, yeah, so what we're playing for here is Laser is going to try and get his bleed out basically 99, and then they pick him up, and then from that point on, Laser is basically free to work any gen, most likely this one that Jason's going to now, because if Jason were to down him or pick him up and drop him, he will just bleed out instantly, and that gives Pedro the hatch escape, which would be WinCon. This is called the Trauma Tech, because I think Trauma was the team that did this first a couple years ago, and this is what they're playing for, and it's gonna look a little bit weird and maybe a little boring for the viewer, but it's actually a strategy, and it's their way out, and crucially, it is our way out of another tie.
No, I mean, I don't like. I think this is sick, to be honest. Like, I don't even like. I know like the setup to it is kind of slow, right? But I think if they get it set up, it's so nasty. Like it's so again, like the fact that like I'm assuming Trauma came up with it. I know it's named after them. The fact that they came up with this is wild. Like this is such an interesting strategy. Jason though does find laser and he's actually just gonna take the hook now. So not it looks like maybe the setup's gonna get interrupted.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe deciding that that's just the only out he has. If he can't, if he lets laser get that far, he has no real counterplay. And it looks like you see we got 2 gates that are close. He's got a hill between them and hatches right here. So once laser dies, then he can just kick the hatch. And these gates are not doable for Pedro. So
Yeah.
Ty coming in once again is going to be very fun, and this is going to be where the endurance game comes in.
Yeah, like
get out of 4K1 eventually.
it's gonna be just a matter of fatigue. Like who can keep up the good play for longer. Essentially, is gonna be the difficult thing here. And I feel like if you're the killer on both sides, you're probably like how many times at the 4K, man? Like how many times do I have to keep putting up results before this ends up ending? Right? It's got to be like a little frustrating. But at the same time, I mean, as long as they both keep it up, I think they know that they're both keeping their teams in it, right? And there's a lot on the line here. This set feels like it matters a lot in this best of 5. So it's it's probably a bit tiring, but it's very important, right? It's very, very important that they actually are able to lock this up. So we'll see. And again, these gates should have realistically no chance, kind of like you said, but the hill in between them both being relatively close, I don't think Pedro's gonna have much of a chance here. Okay, he did do the thing where he opened it a little bit and then let go of it though. So if there is any attempt, it could be here. Wait, there's no way, right? Wait, there's no is there no terrorist? No. No.
He makes it.
No.
Oh my god.
No. 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 He's gonna try to. Whoa.
Wait. Calamity 2-0?
What? They win.
So, all right, the Calamity sparing us another tiebreak, taking this two up so far. We will be going into Plague, and I'm gonna be honest. At this point, I think this is gonna be a 3-0. Imagine you fight so hard to try and win the set that you wanted, and you end up just coming short again. And again, Calamity just barely eking out the win they need when it did not look possible. They have to have insane confidence going into their own pick of Plague.
Oh my god, that was such a crazy finish. How does he get away with that? I literally cannot believe that. We didn't see it for the Killers. I'm assuming Jason probably just like committed a little bit around the other gate, maybe just trying to go off like instinct to see if he can catch him off guard there. Because yeah, he was away from that gate for so long. Pedro, that was so clutch. I cannot believe that's how that set ends. That's gotta be so frustrating for Sinners. And yeah, if you're Calamity right now, you're probably jumping for joy. That puts them in such a good position. Like you said, this could end up being a 3-0 right here with this Plague set. This Plague set is very, very good for Calamity. It feels like a set that's very, very much in their favor. And what a way to finish that, man. What a way. That's so wild. And Sinners, unfortunately, not able to take that Wesker set. That's their first Wesker set that they lose, right? I believe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
To be fair, it would have been the first loss for either team because Calamity was 1-0 in this at least, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's still massive for Calamity to be able to get that win. I do feel like Sinners kind of needed that, right? Because now the only way that Sinners actually gets out of this on top is if they reverse sweep. They have to win out from here. They can't lose a single set, which is a lot to ask, right? Like we have Plague, we have Oni, we have Demogorgon. Like 3 sets where a very just good, solid team like Calamity, you know that they're not going to be. It's going to be hard to take those 3 sets from them, right? Again, it's not even anything like weird or like specialty, right? Like all these killers, all these sets are just very like standard gameplay where you would expect just a good, consistent, experienced team like Calamity to be very strong on, right? Like that's going to be a super difficult task to try to reverse sweep this.
I mean, the one maybe silver lining here is, hey, maybe Sinners has been secretly cracked at these last 3 sets. We haven't seen it before, but we're gonna find out today as Plague is coming up next, and I'm so glad that we had a guaranteed Plague set.
Oh yeah, you love Plague, don't you? Right? That's right. Yeah, my Oni set isn't guaranteed. So yeah, I think you got one up on me here.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Plague's interesting, man, and I think Plague is played on Torment Creek, right? So how do you feel about this matchup in terms of like the killer with the map?
So I mean, obviously, with the way that Plague is played and what you're sort of testing, like the skill set you're testing, you normally would see Plague on a split map. Suffo, ARP are the standards. Sanctum of Wrath if you're feeling spicy. But Torment Creek is something that we have seen Plague played on as like an alternative if you want to toss it up. And partly because it has a pretty consistent 3-gen on the top side. You can have one on the bottom side as well. But it also, being a farm map, there are a lot of places on the map where you can get caught out in transition if you're not on point with pre-leaving. Like, you have that entire cornfield on the left side of the map. You've got a bit on the right side. So you do have where all of your safety is on that map is still kind of clustered top or bottom. And that brings in some of the same skills that you need on like ARP or Cepho, but it's almost inverted because on those maps all the safety is in the middle.
Yeah, it's gonna be. It's a very interesting sounding set. I'm excited to see what they do with this here. As a matter of fact, maybe we can bring in Ratz and see what he has to say about this. I'm curious.
Oh, well, for sure. Actually, with my team, we've also played and picked Plague against Calamity already, right? And we've lost it, but we have figured out a few things that are quite noticeable on the Plague set on Torment Creek, on this rule side specifically, which is, it's mainly, you have to have a good M1 chase. I mean, that applies to every Plague set, which like you can't take an M1 hit, and then you have to have a chase, and if the killer grabs the power, that's fine if you go down to it, because then she can't camp you with power, or she can't tunnel you with power necessarily, because, powers are limited. So you kind of just can't give an M1 tag, which is easier said than done, especially if you play on a ping like this. And if you have like all the resources clustered in like top or bottom, where you want to work the gens and can't really chase. Like, you want to preserve main because, well, you can't die there and people want to work the 3-gen over there. Same with bottom. So what I kind of expect to see here is that they hold up a chase against M1 at all costs. And then if they die in a good position. And then after that, they need to make sure that they actually get to save and flip the map around. And then have the chase on the right side of the map where they still have resources and broken the 3-gen. So it's kind of like, it's a back and forth on both sides. You can play around it on both sides because, well, if the killer has a power near the first hook, then you can secure the second stage much easier or get the tunnel out much sooner, and they don't make the other side of the map. You can't flip it because mid-map is also kind of empty unless you have like the cow tree in a like rotation where it's favorable for you to not get zoned up to top again. So it's a very interesting and unique set, also how it's played. But, Calamity, at least, I mean, they've picked this, right? Calamity has picked this. They've also played already on the Plague set. And, yeah.
Is this one of those sets where you expect like decent killer results, or should we maybe be expecting outs? I mean, obviously ping is a big role here too, right? Which makes it a little more unpredictable. But generally speaking, is this like a set that gets outs, or do you think this is like a big killer result type of a set?
This should be a set that gets out. But I don't know how it's going to go out on ping necessarily, because I haven't seen it on ping.
Yeah, it's kind of like you were saying. I think the M1 hits, right, are super important, right? Like if you give up M1 hits, and again, ping plays a massive role in that. So yeah, that's gonna.
It's very similar to Oni and Twins in that regard with the M1 hits, yeah, because they're really punishing. Like an Oni without a M1 tag is not really going to do anything, but on ping it's going to be a different story because he'll have his power much sooner, most likely. So yes, it's very very similar to that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's gonna be. I mean, what's interesting too is that these teams, like, I feel like when I watch them, sometimes I forget that they're on ping. Like like they play so well. Like I feel like their survivor play is so good. Like there is some moments where you're like, okay, yeah, clearly that was made much harder because of ping. But we've seen some incredible chases from both teams here, where it's like genuinely so impressive, man. Like it is so hard to play this game on high ping, but they do so well with it. Oh, this build is spicy.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, again, Ruin Undying, or just Ruin in general, being really favored now as an option with the gen change. So, and it kind of makes sense here as well, because you can pressure survivors a little bit more easily with the red puke, because you don't really want to be caught working, but we have one of those gens, or one of those totems rather, being broken relatively early, I think. So, the question, and also, like, on a farm map, you know how annoying it can be to try and like spot the totems if it spawns in the cornfield? Like, how many times have you like literally run into the totem before you saw it?
Oh yeah, so often. Yeah, it, like honestly blends really well. They find both immediately. Both totems are gone. Wow. So
This is
goodbye to half the build. Half the build just immediately deleted. He also gets his red puke immediately too.
and this is kind of what what Ratz was talking about, where yes, the plague has her power, but that just means there's one fewer use of this power when it comes time to camp someone. When it comes time to try and snowball and injure survivors. Yes, this is an early down. How much value is Marco going to get out of this? Because we're not expecting survivors to be cleansing against plague basically ever.
Yeah, this will be very interesting. We'll get a hook deep on this bottom side. It's a pain res. And again, it's so big because half of his build is gone. Like, he has one perk right now, right? Like, Corrupt is gone, Ruin and Dying both gone. He just has 3 stacks of pain res. That's all he has on his whole build now in terms of perks. So, yeah, Ruin and Dying, I mean, again, I feel like Ruin, we've seen this perk pop off so many times. Like, obviously, it's one of those perk choices where it can be amazing and sometimes, like, looks like it's like the most OP perk ever in hard carries. But like again, in the nature of hex perks, sometimes this happens too, where you lose your totems, especially with Undying, you just lose them both. And now you're kind of in this weird spot where Marco needs to have a really, really good showing for the rest of this to be able to get a good result now.
Ruin in particular sometimes feels like a win more perk where if you're in a really good game state, it just completely chokes out any chance the survivors have to you know, get gen progress like slowly in like 4K1, 4K2 situations. But like Marco now is just gonna have to try and camp for second here, but like the top side gen spread that we had has been broken, and it was a much better gen spread too. There is a bottom side spread kind of that's not nearly as good. It will give the survivors more time to pad up in advance, and I don't think this is a great game state.
Did you catch where his other fountain is? Because he should have a second fountain thanks to his apple. I didn't catch where it is though, because I think the position. Oh, it's okay. Oh, no. That's actually a good fountain. That's
Yeah.
Survivor point of view. Yeah. I'm not sure where it is, but it's actually there. It's bottom side, and he gets it. And so they don't get the unhook in time, do they?
This will either way almost certainly be the death of Gustavo unless they get like a Palace Sun to knock Plague out of her power, because even with base kid BT, good luck chasing against this. I mean, Gustavo did a good job in the beginning to at least delay chase a little longer, but it was like possibly a chase onto Jason, but no, really worried behind Gustavo, who will try to make Shaq. Does have the hay bale for cover and Shaq pallet. Is it enough time? Pallet broken, but what's his gushing? He does have Lithe Resi. Wait, Gustavo gets that, and he's got a good filler pallet here.
Yeah,
vantage point. Urban 2.
Urban 2, so good. He's buying so much time here. If he could even just make it down towards top side. They actually they break the 3-gen bottom.
And
they broke it. Oh my god, that's massive. Ooh.
Yeah, because you're now at the point where you've got 4 injured survivors from the green puke, and now you have to snowball with that last bit of power that you have. There is one cleanse coming through, and it's interestingly, it's not Gustavo cleansing, it is Bucky.
Yeah, that is very interesting to see, and it's also like kind of mid-map too, right? Like I feel like a lot of times when you see cleanses, they'll try to like put them really far away from where the pressure is. Like I thought that cleanse would maybe be like deep top side, but like it's kind of within range, right? Like he just immediately goes and grabs it. So that's an interesting decision to cleanse.
But they're doubling this gen topside, and with the pole being coming through, we don't really have eyes on where Marco is. Coming topside, okay.
Yeah,
but everything is up here. And as long as he does not find Gustavo, as it will be chasing Vinny, and I think we should be seeing the remaining 2 survivors working Gen's bottom side. But there's all these resources up, and it's easy to just play super safe here and try and wait out this power. As I'm honestly surprised that Vinny's technically in chase, as the LS has been broken. Yeah, no, chase has been broken. So we're now.
I think you don't even catch up there, right? I think you have to break that. Yeah, power is probably going to start running out soon. I know he does have the Devotee's Amulet that gives more time, but it's got to be getting close running out. Oh, it does get down in time though.
Not quite.
Needs a pain res to keep us alive to keep endgame away for a little bit longer. They're almost surely doubling a gen bottom, right?
Yeah, and this is one of those points in the game where you become really painfully aware of like how long the map is. Like how far away is this top side gen from this bottom side gen?
Oh, yeah, really
Plague
far.
does not have the mobility to try and cover both, especially with all survivors up. So they are going to pop the last gens, and you were asking earlier about expected results for Plague here. This is one of the killers that has the lowest average hook stages for all that we've seen. Plague is only getting like Plague and Oni both are only getting about 8 hook stages average. Most killers are in the 9 to 10 ballpark. The only kills we've seen that have had worse results are Spirit and Chucky, and we've seen almost none of it. So it's a smaller sample size. So this is not a lot of stages, but it is still also a lot less than we should be expecting. The game just not working out well for Marco, and we're seeing a lot of the punish on what can happen if you go for Ruin and it doesn't pay off. Because I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure this happened in the Cenobite game too, right? At the beginning, losing Ruin, now
Yep.
doubling down with Undying, and that's still not quite enough.
He finds the fresh hook though. This is a silver lining, and he gets it down really quickly. So this will at least save it a little. This should get him 7 stages, because I don't really see a world where they try to save this, especially with all these pools of corruption. There's no way he's gonna hook him. He's gonna hook him right beside a pool of corruption too. So yeah, 100%. This is gonna be 7 stages, I think, from here, unless they want to get really crazy. But I don't see that happening, because I think 7 stages is still like I think that's a good salvage result for Marco, right? Like this could have been much worse had he not found Death Hook. But I feel like if you're Sinners, you probably still feel pretty good about this, right? Like 7 stages is honestly pretty solid overall, and that feels like a result that feels like should be relatively beatable if your killer has a good game.
Yeah, it looks like they might actually try and play for this once the red puke wears off. 7 stages, especially if you can get Gustavo to be the one who dies for this and get 1 extra stage out, basically. 7 stages is still very salvageable, but that's probably why they're playing for this, because I feel like Sinners kind of have to play a little bit more risky at this point in the game. Oh, if there's another red puke now, you can't.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. There's a pool of corruption right beside this too. That's why I think maybe they were like gonna play the unhook right as the pool got grabbed. I don't know. I'm not really sure what their plan was, because I feel like like with how close that pool of corruption was, it feels like there's almost no time to even make a play. So yeah, I think at this point they're probably like they were maybe setting up for something, but I think at this point they probably go right. Like he goes struggle at this point. It's not even worth trading for the Death Hook survivor. The only reason it's worth it is to get him out. Are they still thinking about it? I mean, I guess if you send in Gustavo, like worst case scenario is that they both die. So I was gonna say worst case scenario you end up with the same result, but I guess worst case scenario is that they both die. You give up an additional stage. This is interesting that they're even like thinking about this, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if they can try and bait Marco into walking through the pallet to knock out of power, but I don't know what else your out is here.
I mean, if they unhook him,
timing.
if they unhook him like very last minute, then I think he'll have time for like 1 or 2 corrupt pukes, and that's it. I think. But yeah, Gustav already taken a hit. Oh god. Oh lord. And yeah, Jason's worth 2 stages. They're just giving up more stages. They're just punting away stages. What are they doing? Oh no! This is gonna be 9 stages now. Jason's worth 2, I believe.
Getting a little bit greedy.
Oh, what are they doing? Why do they do this? This was so strange, man. Like, Plague with power up is so dangerous to try to unhook against, man. It's not like this is just like a Freddy sitting in front of the hook. This is the corrupt puke Plague, man. That was a very bizarre decision. I don't know. They must have felt confident they were gonna be able to get something more there, but yeah, they just punted away 2 more stages. That's gonna be 9 stages for Calamity now, when it would have been 7 had they just left. And that might end up mattering a lot. Could matter a lot to go second game.
This is one of those moments where you pull out the 1v1 tactics, get your lives split up, start the timer when you hear that red puke signal, and say, okay, we've got 60 seconds to wait this out.
But... yeah, or potentially 80, but yeah, I mean, something like that, yeah. And again, that was so bizarre seeing them go for that, and that's gotta feel good if you're Calamity, though, right? Like, that was honestly a really rough start to that. Like I feel like the build from the killer just got completely dismantled immediately, right? Like both Ruin and Undying just being deleted, like honestly within like 30 seconds of the game starting, being down to like 1 perk. I mean, that was such a good start for Sinners. It was looking so bad for Calamity, and even in the end there, like right, like him finding Bucky was really good. He found the fresh hook, and he kind of like took it from a 4 stage to a 7 stage right there. And then again, I don't know, through the grace of God, I guess Sinners just decided to donate even more stages, and he ends up turning them into a 9 stage. Like, that's such a huge result considering the spot he was in. That could have easily been like a 5 stage game, and ends up being a 9 stage game. That's so good.
You know, I really do like this theory that it was divine retribution, because it is Sinners.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, it's just it's penance for their sins, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They're paying for what they did.
That's absolutely what's happening here. I mean, I feel like it could be a little bit of desperation. We've seen it before. I remember we had another plague set between, I want to say, Torment and Synapse, where it felt like the plague was in position to, or sorry, the survivors were in position to at least tie and possibly win, and they got really greedy, and they ended up getting 4K'd in endgame, and in a set they should have won. And in this case, also because this is the first game of the set, it's odd. Like, I wonder if they have in their head, okay, here's the result we're expecting to get on our killer side. We have to do better than that here.
Yeah. See, that's what I was thinking too, because also like, like you told me earlier that we have not seen Sinners in a plague set at all, right? So like we don't really know how they are in the set. We don't know like I know that okay, so I'm told Sinners is like kind of like a super team from South America, right? So you would think that they should have pretty much all bases covered if it's like a super team, right? In terms of killers. But I feel like even in those cases, there's almost always like certain sets that you might be a little less comfortable on than others, right? And this might be one of those sets, right? Where yeah, maybe they felt like, man, like on our killer side, maybe 7 stages is actually kind of high for what we're kind of expecting. So maybe we want to knock that down a little, right? Like it might have been something along those lines, because that would make a little sense if they're not super confident in it. That being said, they made their job even harder now with them having to beat 9 stages. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's really the only sense I can make of it for going for that, because yeah, that felt like an extremely risky play for them.
If you're going into this with that win con, this is the survivor's game to lose. I don't think that even if Jason can play this like perfectly, and I don't think he can force to do better than that on this set. This should be outs normally, and it's up to the survivor team to like make some major mistakes, which I don't expect that they should. Pray for no caster curse here, but there's a component here which I find interesting. Again, when we do seasonal balancing and we change up the maps, part of it is, it'd get boring if we were seeing the same killers on the same maps always. And so there's a little bit of variety coming in, but it's sometimes nice to see how teams adapt to, like, you get used to playing the killer in this specific context, and if you change the context, the way you have to play around the killer changes, the way you play the macro in particular changes. So for a killer like Plague, Torment Creek makes you think of the set fundamentally a little bit differently. And so, okay, maybe your team has experience playing against Plague, but do you have experience playing against Plague on this map in particular, which is also not a map that you see a whole lot of? Like, when we're seeing Wesker on Wrecker's Yard, we're used to Wesker, we're used to Wrecker's Yard. It's a chase killer on Wrecker's Yard. Okay, we can make this connect even if we haven't necessarily played a whole lot of it. This is a completely different ball game.
Yeah, even I feel like even little things like, using objects around the map to like juke like the plague's puke, right? Like even little things like that, right? Like you probably like have grinded that down to a T on maps like, Cold Tower or whatever, right? But yeah, like on farm maps, right? It's like there's different things around the map. Everything is different in terms of what you use. Yeah, that could end up playing a role. And it looks like Jason really seems to love this triple regression build. The same build he's running on Wesker, kind of rocking the same thing in terms of perks.
And double apple this time. So we're going to have 3 uses of red puke, but they're not going to be as strong as what we had before. Chase on the hind immediately does get a little bit of a tag of the puke. Now the question will be, does Jason want to commit? There's a good chance that he will, because Nia is kind of in the uncorrupted area. And I think Jason does have kind of a decent gen spread in both top and... Actually, wait.
The top
that looks
side
like a pretty
really
gross
good.
top side 4-gen.
Yeah, that top side. Yeah, there's like a really gross 3-gen up here with that 4-gen. That 4th still really close as well. This top side gen up is actually disgusting, to be honest.
And a red pool.
Yeah, I think he should definitely try to save that red pool for later if possible, right? Because I think getting a hook top side with that red pool up. No, well, yeah, hey, we'll see what he can do with it. But I think getting a hook up there with this red pool would have been insane. But he can maybe do the opposite with one of these pools, maybe more towards bottom side, depending on how this chase goes.
I think he kind of just has to snowball here, and that may be part of the idea. But this Hein making enough distance towards bottom that I don't think you can't drag Hein up to top side with this down anyway. And you see, okay, second corrupt pool right by where Hein went down. And so and it looks like the other one is in mid map. So
Ooh, you
this
can carry
hold
mid map,
top
yeah.
speed can be pretty good.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty good hook position. This is not terrible. This is still kind of within range of these topside gens where you can pressure them at least a little, right? Like maybe the really deep topside gens, not really, but you can at least pressure them a bit. And yeah, you still have this pool of corruption nearby too. This feels not terrible.
We can possibly see, like, the red pool's gonna run out, but the survivors have to play a little bit scared because of the range aspect here. But I'm not sure, like, how much pressure there's actually gonna be. You do have, like, that corner gen in the topside 4 gen is still kind of safe. You're not, Jason's probably not gonna want to commit to that, and also, yeah, the gen that Lactron's on as well. So the survivors are getting this unhook off while they're pressuring 2 of the further gens in that topside 4 gen, and high kind of body blocking here as well. But they have cow tree. Red pool is going to come in, and now they're just going to have to die bottom. And
he's actually bailing from Jace, yeah. Hein also had DS, so this ends up being a pretty good decision for Jason, I think. I think had he committed, especially to Hein, that would have, I think, been very costly. Instead comes up here and finds Laser, who hasn't quite been injured yet. Finds a bunch of gens that are also pressure too. Wants to put Eruption down on all of them. So yeah, it feels like he does kind of want to, I think he noticed the really nasty gen setup and does want to play around it at least a bit. Because he's kind of giving Survivor some distance here by kicking these gens. Especially while he's in red puke, right? Like he has his powered up state. And he could try to take advantage and get some hits and downs, but he's like kind of prioritizing the gen regression and kind of holding the gen setup instead and going for the more like control play style.
But this is kind of why we were favoring Calamity for this set going into it. We see time and time again, the survivors on Calamity are extremely disciplined and methodical. They're not letting the pressure get to them. They're playing this set out carefully. They were doing a good job of getting away from that gen spread as soon as Jason came there, not giving anything over. Like, this is one of the survivor teams that I would count on to not throw.
Yeah, they feel like they play very, very solid in terms of like macro and like, yeah, not going to be a whole lot of like huge slip ups there. And again, even here, same thing happening. They do pop one of the gens top side, and while Laser's still on the ground, and also it looks like there's going to get another down over here on the Hind, but still one of the gens on the top side's broken. Although that is the first gen to pop. Like this is 4 gens still, so like still not a bad spot for Jason either. Like we're talking about this top side gen up a lot, but like really there's just not that much gen progress on the map in general. Like it's really not that bad of a spot for Jason to be in at all.
Yeah, it could certainly be a lot worse, and Jason will at least have, you know, the whole pop interruption on top of what Marco was working with. Now that is the last pool coming in. This is the opportunity to try and get a snowball. You have 4 survivors that are all fully injured. Now they need to not be clustered to make sure the snowball doesn't happen. And Lactron will be the one who's spotted at a jungle gym. Actually, no, it's Hein who's opting to just die on the pallet. Does have DS, as we noted before, and if Hein's got DS, probably also is going to have that smash hit, that parental guidance. You can't really pick this.
Yep.
But we saw Calamity here too. Did we not?
Oh, she bailed, and yeah, it's smash hit without parental guidance, but still smash hit, right? She can still hit DS, you can still get the pallet stun, and you can bail out of there. That also breaks them out of power too.
Yeah. With smash hit.
That's pretty massive.
Hein is now also going to be able to make it to top side. I think they already broke 2 of these gens, so now they can afford to chase here, die here, and try and get those bottom side gens. As Jason has no more puke, it's only M1 from here on out if they don't cleanse.
Yeah, and the setup here is not too bad, right? With that filler, I think is the filler outside the other side still there too. I think it might have been broken, but Hein's going to be able to buy at least a decent bit of time here and let his team get some progress down there. Yeah, he saw his filler on this side too. So yeah, he's gonna be able to buy a good bit of time here. And he is death hook, so like him dying here is gonna be pretty big. But how much is it gonna cost me, Jason, right? That's the answer. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for answering me, Calamity. Thank you. Yeah, at least 2. And actually Lactron was close by. He's gonna get chased immediately afterwards as well.
And we will get the pick. And again, this death comes in. The gen split, however, is very good. And I don't remember exactly how many stages Calamity need to get out, but I don't think it's really that many. 1 person getting out, two people getting out is definitely enough for them, I think. But
yeah, if they get any fresh hook out, they already went off that alone, because it was 9 stages 4 fresh hooks that was the result last game. So yeah, if they get a single fresh hook out, that's already enough.
Let's see. We got one gate here. If we see where the other gate is, the gate RNG here will be a really big deal because Plague not having any mobility, as long as you just split up and die away from opposite gates. Oh, and they still have Cow Tree Palette. This is gonna be tragic.
Yeah.
No, he's gonna leave. He has to.
No corrupt pools either. So like all these good setups are just so good, right? Like there's no like trying to do anything here other than kick pallet, go to next pallet is so difficult from this point with these strong setups. Still, is trying to like kind of pressure the map and catch someone in a worse position. He does kind of catch Lactron in a much worse spot here.
Ping.
And yeah,
okay, there's the eruption value, I guess.
Yep, eruption is coming in, and he can slug this as well. It looks like he is going to. But as long as they pre-leave and keep a lot of distance, this is still going to be really hard, right? Like, obviously, it would be great to get, like, a 3-man slug here and kind of end it that way. But, again, as long as they play a good, solid game on the survivor side, they're going to make that very difficult to do.
So we should take note here real quick. Adam has Adrenaline, which seems kind of odd in a play game if you're going to get, you're not going to get the heal. But it does mean that if Jason is going for these slugging tactics and Pedro is one of the ones who slugged, then he will be picked up by the gen pop.
Yeah, which actually could play a big role here because slugging feels like I know what Jason wants to go for. As a matter of fact, are these survivors are they just leaving Latchner on the ground and just pressuring those two split gens? Because both of those gens had a lot of pressure, and I think they might just be doing that instead. Because Laser, the pickup still hasn't come through, and I'm assuming that hill gen by Shaq is maybe just being worked by Laser right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, there it is. And the speed.
If the Adrenaline was what they were going for, like bait the slug on Pedro, but he's just doing a good enough job in chase. And do we have hope in play is the other question.
I think I might have saw it. I might have saw it on a build earlier, but I'm not 100%. I don't know if Jason can do anything here, right? This feels pretty over.
It should be. Oh, and he's chasing the Hope Survivor and Cow Tree Pallets up.
Oh yeah, Yep. You're not. Yeah, there's no way you're catching this guy quickly, and Jack pallet too. So can easily just go to the God pallet, throw it. Yeah.
And he's also got fully comp outfit filters. He's definitely cheating. Like, what are you gonna do?
True. And there they go again, playing they might even get hatch here, but they get 6 stages out, which is gonna be enough for the win, and that's it. Calamity 3-0s. They 3-0 Sinners in the finals of the losers bracket. That's crazy. What a good performance here.
Yeah, I'm extremely impressed, and this is going to be also a huge confidence boost for Calamity going into that grand finals for the rematch against Elysium. So, yeah,
dude, so well played, man. Even Sinners, like on their comfort pick of Wesker, just couldn't quite get the job done, right? Like Calamity just still sticking with it. These guys were playing on they were playing on 200 ping, and they literally looked like they were on 50 ping. I could not believe how well they were playing. It was so absurd. And they played both the pinhead set and the plague set so cleanly, and yeah, very well deserved 3-0. So unfortunately for Sinners, they are gonna get knocked out. 3rd place, which is still very good. I mean, that's still a very, very good result overall, right? But they aren't going to be able to make it to the grand finals. Calamity will be going to the grand finals against Elysium. Extremely well played.
Yeah, and for the viewers, I believe that we will be having the grand finals actually next week. We will not have a match tomorrow, so that will actually be the last of DBDLeague for this weekend. I believe we might have some things to say.
So we gotta wait a whole week? Not like this. Not like this. I want to see this matchup, man. I want to see Elysium versus Calamity. That's going to be such a good grand finals. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, it does give the teams time to prepare for the upcoming match. It would be a little bit rough for Calamity if they had to play immediately tomorrow after this. So we are trying to give the teams time to prepare. That will, yes. So the grand finals will be next Saturday at 6 p.m. Central European time, which I believe would be noon Eastern Standard Time for the NA and South American viewers. I believe that's all the information I have for right now.
Super gross set, though. I loved watching this. This was fantastic. I'm a little sad we didn't make it to the Oni set, but honestly, it's hard to even really mind. These guys, like, both these teams played so well, man. Like, honestly, just such incredible talent from both these teams. And again, I mean, Sinners had a crazy good run in this whole league, right? Like it's kind of like you were talking about before, like the unfortunate loss in like the first round early on, but then an incredible losers bracket run. Calamity, though, I feel like every time I see Calamity, they just look so clean, man. They're such a good team. And yeah, I mean, very, very well deserved seeing them in the grand finals.
This is certainly a good way to build hype for South America's return going into future tournaments, and especially if we start seeing even more South American teams participating in future events as well. Because this time we only had the one, but surely this will help spark some more competition in that region.
Yeah, it honestly makes me really happy to see. I feel like I mean, I've been kind of disconnected from the South America scene myself, so it's been really nice to see all these people come in. And again, there's some crazy good talent down there too, right? Like Sinners is putting up crazy fights, getting like really dominant wins over extremely good teams out of Europe and NA. So it's really nice to see the representation from there. Some very good players.